Please be seated. To our University President, Father Joel E. Tabora, Father Daniel McNamara, to our distinguished guest, to our Board of Director, Mr. Lizada, to our guests from the different institutions, our dear students, faculty members, guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to this forum on urban and regional planning, postcards from the future towards a plan-Davao megapolis and plan-Mindanao into the 21st century. To give us the opening remarks, please help me welcome our very dear President, Father Joel E. Tabora, S.J.
Thank you, Aminel. Mr. Benji Lizada, the Chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Ateneo de Davao University, distinguished members of the faculty, students, guests, friends, good afternoon to you all. In the name of the Ateneo de Davao University, it is my privilege to welcome you to this special event this afternoon here in our Finster Hall. Before anything else, I think we can say that we are all happy and excited on this afternoon as we celebrate the debut of the Ateneo Institute on Environmental and Urban Regional Planning. This Ateneo Institute, what is now being called the AtInEUS, is a result of our vision and mission and our strategic planning towards the implementation of the vision and mission, part of which is a clear commitment of the university to social justice and under the rubric of social justice to the service of the common good, part of which, of course, is the environment. Not only the rural environment, but also the urban environment. And I'm very happy that this day we can celebrate the institution of the Ateneus under its leadership, urban planner Ray Navasilia, whom we're privileged to have among our faculty and staff. We hope through this institute to come into an ongoing dialogue between academe, with Ateneo de Davao acting as one of the representatives, I presuppose, of many different academic groups in the country, and the city in general, but especially the city of Davao. And I think as we were conceiving of this Ateneus, there was one thing that was very deep and very urgent in our hearts. We, in our love for Davao, all do not want Davao to become another Metro Manila. We see Metro Manila to be a fiasco of the lack of urban planning, of the lack of urban imagination, of the lack of urban discipline, and of the lack of a serious cultivation of human discipline and human sacrifice in shared cooperation towards the achievement of a common urban good. So, for our city of Davao, we dream, we hope for a city that is the result of planning, of imagination, of discipline, of cooperation towards the achievement of a shared common good of a human society where no one is excluded from, such as healthy green spaces, from humane shelter, from nutritious food, from beauty, and from human culture. It's in this context that we today enter this forum on urban and regional planning, postcards from the future towards a plan-Davao Megapolis and Plan-Mindanao into the 21st century. The title itself may be intriguing. It states that we are going to be talking about planning in the urban setting, but also in the regional setting, the urban plans being impossible without a sound regional plan in interaction with the urban plan, and this very intriguing idea of postcards from the future. You know, when you go on a trip, some of you may be too young for this, but we who are older, we used to send, when we went on trips, postcards to one another. Postcards showing the beautiful sights that we saw on these trips. And we're thinking about postcards from the future, visions, images that may be part of our dreaming, may be part of our hoping, may be part of our planning, that we can use to inspire our planning into the future. So we're talking about a plan-Davao, and we're talking about a plan-Mindanao entering us further into this 21st century. And what better person can we think of to lead us into this discussion than the architectural visionary of the Philippines today, the architect and environmental planner, Felino June Palafox, whom we are very, very privileged to welcome with us this afternoon here at Ateneo de Davao University. Let's give him a round of applause. Architect Palafox and distinguished members of the faculty, friends, I welcome you all. May we all have together a fruitful forum. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Father, for your warm message and at the same time a thought-provoking one. I know you're all excited, and so to tell us more about this forum, may I call on the Director of Ateneo Institute of Environment and Urban Studies, Environmental Planner Ray Navasilia. Let's give him a warm applause, please.
Our very own University President, Father Joel E. Tabora, SJ, and our Chairman of the Board, Mr. Benji Lisada, Chairman of the Board of Trustees of Ateneo de Davao, and of course, our Chairperson of the University Community Engagement and Advocacy Council, Attorney Myong Cabarde, and of course, our resource person or main discussant this afternoon, which he will be properly introduced later, but I would mention already his name because his name is already in our tarpaulin. Architect and Environmental Planner Felino June Palafox Jr. And of course, our members of our Ateneo community and our panel of reactors this afternoon, as well as our guests this afternoon. I will not mention anymore all of them. Our forum today is a beginning of our quest for solution to urban problem that we are facing here, right here in our place in Davao City. And not only in Davao City, but also other cities in the Philippines. Not only the major cities as a capital of a region, but also other secondary cities that experience similar circumstances like Davao City, and the worst situation that we can compare is really Metro Manila. And in the recent International Conference on Urban Development, a World Bank expert on urban development mentioned that in the Philippines, there is generally a rapidly urbanizing cities. And country with 50% urbanized areas in 2015 and expected to grow at 65% in 2050. 100 million people will reside in cities by 2050, and urban density is second highest in the region. And we know that Metro Manila dominates the urbanization in the Philippines. Yet urbanization benefit not fully realized, but there is still limited economic growth. In the Philippines, cities currently contribute to more than 70% of the national gross national product, and Metro Manila alone contributes to 36% of the national gross domestic product. And however, the country has not benefited from the urbanization gain in terms of growth, employment creation, and poverty reduction as much as other cities in the world. As a matter of fact, poverty is estimated at 30% in urban areas. There is inequality, remains high, and 7.5 million Filipinos live in slums, over 50%, and will live in slum in Metro Manila by 2050. And we know that the cities in Metro Manila area, many of the residents there live in vulnerable areas, vulnerable to floods and other form of disasters. Now, let's talk about the Philippines, or rather Davao City in particular. Davao City is one of the biggest cities in the world with a land area of 2,444 square kilometers, and it's reached already a population of 1.5, or to be specific, 1,449,296, making it the fourth most populous city in the Philippines and most populous city in Mindanao. And with the continuing increase in population, it experienced unprecedented change. And in order to sustain the growth of Davao City, it is vital that the economy grow enough also to create more opportunities for the population. And therefore, this has become a challenge for all of us here in Davao City. As a member of the community in Davao, especially those who are into the architectural profession, the urban planning profession, the engineering professions, this becomes a challenge to us how we can respond to the sustainable growth of Davao City. And for that reason, the university has created this institute, primarily tasked to gather consensus among stakeholders of Davao City in order to contribute to sustainable development of Davao City. So this forum is intended to discuss what would be the desired future of Davao. And our guests this afternoon will project a scenario in the future, what would be the ideal Davao Megapolis in the next few years to come, maybe 2020 or even beyond. And the presentation of our resource person will also talk about the scenario for Mindanao. And for that reason, the stakeholders present this afternoon will have also to chip in their ideas on how we can really better plan for the sustainable growth of Davao City. So that's the backdrop of our forum this afternoon. And I will not go into specific objective to this because the discussion that will ensue thereafter would be a freewheeling discussion on what would be alternatives for Davao City in the future. And for that reason, I ask everyone to participate in the discussion afterwards, after the reaction statement also of our panel of directors. Pleasant afternoon greetings to all of you and magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
That is surely something to look forward to. Thank you, Sir Ray. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the most exciting part of our program. This is to hear more from our guest speaker, of whom I am very much privileged to introduce. Our guest speaker has 44 years of experience in architecture and 42 years in planning. He was educated in Christ the King Seminary, University of Santo Tomas, University of the Philippines, and Harvard University. For his continuing education, he took up an advanced management development program for real estate. He has also been invited as a lecturer in institutions such as Harvard University and MIT, and in 18 other countries in Asia, Europe, and North America. His extensive travels allowed him to observe 1,000 cities in 67 countries. He also actively participated in conferences, lectures, seminars, and fora organized by international groups, of which he is an associate member, like the American Institute of Architects, U.S. Green Building Council, Urban Land Institute, and the American Planning Association. He is the country representative for the Council for Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat. On July 1, 2013, he was given an award by the Council for Tall Buildings in Urban Habitat and elected him as one of its 2 new fellows worldwide. He was also cited by Forbes Asia magazine in their list of 48 heroes of philanthropy in Asia, one of 4 in the Philippines. He led and managed his firm Palafox Associates in the planning of more than 16 billion square meters of land and the design and architecture of more than 12 million square meters of building floor area in 39 countries. The firm has also received more than 200 awards and recognitions in the past 27 years, most notably as the first Filipino architectural firm included in the top 500 architectural firms in the world of the London-based World Architecture magazine in 1999, the only Southeast Asian architectural firm included in the list. For 2012, Palafox Associates ranks 89th in the list of the world's largest practices and top 8 in leisure projects. BCI Asia has awarded Palafox Associates as BCI Asia's market leader in architecture in the Philippines for 9 consecutive years, from 2005 to 2013. In 2014, Palafox Associates organized its 5 architectural studios in Palafox Architecture Group Incorporated. Our guest speaker has been recently elected as board chairman of the National Real Estate Association. He is the first architect, urban planner, president of the Management Association of the Philippines in 2011, immediate past president of the Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners and the International Real Estate Federation. He is a fellow of the United Architects of the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us welcome environmental planner and architect Felino June A. Palafox Jr.
Thank you. Glad to be here, and thank you for the very generous introduction, Dr. Eminel Jane Albior. Father Joel Tabora, thanks for having me here again. And of course, Environmental Planner Engineer Ray Navasilia, thanks for making sure I'm here today. And the other distinguished guests. This is the third time I'm speaking here. The first time, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, Father Bert Alejo invited me to talk to the architecture students. And then I think last year, Father Joel Tabora and Mayor Duterte, we spoke here also. And I'm glad to be here. Father Joel talked about a little about postcards from the future. It seems to be very effective. I started doing this when I was named hired by the ruler of Dubai to bring Dubai from help bring Dubai from the fourth world into the first world in less than 15 years. I was name hired among 20 from 14 countries. I was the youngest and the only Southeast Asian. And the ruling class of Dubai got to know about me because of Metro Plan Manila. I worked for 2 years for government project because of my United Nations Scholars Grant at UP. And at the World Bank in Washington, D.C., the Dubai leaders saw the report about Metro Manila. And we did several alternatives, plans for Metro Manila, strategies and so on. We said snapshots from the future, not postcards. And we also did do-nothing scenarios. With the do-nothing scenario, Metro Manila will have catastrophic traffic, catastrophic flooding, catastrophic housing. It's happening now because of the do-nothing scenario. And past governments had been suffering from NATO. You know what's NATO? No action, talk only. That's probably why the mayor of Davao got elected, because less talk, more action. But anyway, I hope the slides will come out good. I'll be presenting in Shanghai, vertical urbanism, metropolitan areas. And that's why Philippine Metropoli, metropolis is a collection of several cities. Megalopolis is several metropolitan areas. And we started with Metro Manila, Metro Cebu, and Metro Davao. Metro Manila now, in 1975-77, was a model of metropolitan planning. Today, it's an urban laboratory of how not to do it. Father was right. How not to do it. Every piece of part of the city is how not to do it. Like Engineer Ray told about some of the problems in Metro Manila. And it seems that elsewhere in the country, other cities are copying the mistakes of Metro Manila. And with the 157 slides, maybe I have to talk 8 seconds per slide, so we'll have more time for Q&A. Next slide, please. Yeah. We are now about 100 million. Metro Manila, year 2000, studied in Harvard. All the metropolitan areas in the world, Metro Manila was the fastest growing city, 60 persons per hour. Delhi was only 47 persons per hour. I think London, Paris, New York, about 2 to 9 persons per hour. Moscow was negative 6. This was 16 years ago. And next slide. And how do we, key issues and trends in urban development that we should look at, address? High poverty index, rise of megacities, rapid urban population growth, environmental degradation, inadequate basic services. So tomorrow's success will depend on how quickly government, business, and civil society improve their collaboration today. Next slide. And how to address this? One of them is inclusionary zoning. We practice democratic architecture, architecture for humanity, public-private partnership, citizen participation, inclusive modes of transportation and zoning, models of best practices like new urbanism, smart growth. You know, in the state of Massachusetts, they have an anti-isnab zoning, bawal ang isnabero. And when I was in Harvard, we compared metropolitan Boston and metropolitan Los Angeles. There is less social unrest in Boston because of that inclusionary zoning. And in Boston also, there are less heart attacks and obesity. Because in Boston, you're practically penalized to use the car. You have to walk. In Los Angeles, you're practically have no legs if you don't have car. But we go into that later. Next slide. Global trends and best practices. This is the High Line in New York. It was an abandoned elevated railway. The government was going to demolish it, and private sector New York said, don't demolish it. We'll make it into elevated walkway and park. They collect $30 million a year from the citizens. Their expense is only $10 million. Try to imagine MRT EDSA. Remove the trains and just make it as an elevated walkway. It's faster to walk than drive along EDSA, especially on Friday payday and it's raining. Next slide. And these are the top 10 cities in the world. We had a roundtable discussion a while ago and talk about sustainable Davao. We have been using the wrong models in our city planning. We have been copying Los Angeles. Los Angeles was designed for the automobile, not for the pedestrian. And you can see in here, the sustainable cities, 3 cities from Asia, Seoul, Korea, Hong Kong, and Singapore. And yet, until now, we're copying Hollywood and Los Angeles. I got to meet the 3 mayors of Los Angeles, and they announced to the rest of the world, Los Angeles is how not to do it. They've been committing mistakes the past 70 years, so they're sending their urban planners and architects, London, Paris, New York, Singapore, Tokyo, and Hong Kong to unlearn their mistakes. And I had the opportunity to talk to all of them. Mr. Mayor, congratulations. You're telling the rest of the world that Los Angeles planning is a big mistake. We have a bigger problem in my country. And they ask, where are you from? The Philippines. What's your problem? We copied all your mistakes. And our leaders of industry and government are not even aware of it. And they found their way into our building code, zoning code, and development practices. Next slide. And Vancouver, Canada. The best green building policy, 200 plus parks and open spaces. If you compare the city to the human body, open spaces are the lungs. It's like we're selling our lungs. The downtown, place of work, trade and commerce, are the hearts of the city. And the waterways and the roads are the arteries. If we compare our cities to a human body, we need a heart bypass. We cannot breathe anymore because the lungs of the city have been sold and developed. Next slide. Elsewhere in the world, San Francisco, #1 green city in North America. Next slide. Stockholm, Sweden, revival of the rivers and waterways, walkable and bikeable. Elsewhere in the world, the waterfront is a prime real estate. In Dubai, we rent out of, the rulers of the Dubai Emirate rent out of prime real estate, only 70 kilometers of waterfront. So they had to make the Palm Islands to artificially make 2,000 kilometers more of prime urban real estate. And here we have the 3rd longest coastline in the world, and we destroy our waterfront. Next slide. In Copenhagen, bicycle is the 2nd mode of transportation. #1 is walking. In our public transport policy, it's all addressed for the 2% car owners, Filipinos. All of us Filipinos, 100% are pedestrians. Once you leave your car, you're a pedestrian. And yet, Department of Transportation, Public Works, they don't fix the sidewalks. They put skyways that will pollute the city and divide neighborhoods. These are the concepts before the 1973 OPEC oil crisis. So bicycle, and Reykjavik, Iceland. Next slide, please. Renewable clean energy. We are #2 in the world in geothermal energy. #2. Next slide. Malmö, Sweden, wind energy. Many of our islands, we have the right kind of wind speed. Next slide. Portland, Oregon, 250 miles of bicycle lanes, trails, and pathways. You had to copy from American city. The worst is Los Angeles. And you see developers bragging, oh, you're just like living in Los Angeles. Next. Freiburg, Germany, car-free city. Only public transit and pedestrians and bicycles. Next slide. Oslo, Norway. Lowest greenhouse gas emission in Europe. Next slide. Barcelona, Spain. This is one of the longest pedestrian street in the world. And if you don't have enough time to see Barcelona, just walk this Las Rambla. You can see the culture, the history, the architecture of Catalan. Next slide. Hong Kong. Hong Kong Science Park for Research and Development. Second in international internet bandwidth. Next slide. Hong Kong. Did you know that if we follow the density of Hong Kong, all the world's 7 billion population, we can all fit in the state of Texas. I shared that in Harvard, and my classmates from Texas were shaking their heads. In Hong Kong, 70% open space. Because they went vertical city, we went urban sprawl. Again, how not to do it. Next slide. Sydney, Australia, the Olympic Village, solar-powered housing. Next slide. Singapore, water treatment facilities. Most of the potable water from Singapore now comes from the flush toilet. They just clean it up. Next slide. Seoul, South Korea. You look at the picture bottom left. They used to have a skyway and a road above this waterway. The mayor of South Korea, now the president, they removed the skyway, they removed the road covering the waterway. Now this is one of the most popular spots in Seoul, Korea right now. We are building skyways, the rest of the world are removing skyways. Next slide. Santa Cruz, California, crime mapping. Aside from, we've recommended hazard mapping in this country, now I'm recommending crime mapping. Next slide. So you can do a crime map in your city. Which area of the city has the highest crime? It's one way of shaming the mayors, in fact, and the police. Next slide. Nairobi, Kenya, innovation hub of Africa. Next slide. And Vienna, Austria. Most of these streets in Europe used to be streets, urban roads for cars and vehicles. They converted them into pedestrian streets. Next slide. Auckland, Zealand, again, the urban open spaces. Education station. Next slide. Geneva, the same. Next slide. Zurich, Switzerland. So you can see the lungs of the city all over the place. Next slide. London, renew, refit, reconnect. Until recently, even Prince Charles of England, they did not want tall buildings. But the rest of European cities were going tall and vertical. So they accepted tall buildings provided the first 3 floors is available to the public, and the top floor available to the public. And they established visual corridors as long as you don't block the view of the Big Ben, Parliament, London Bridge. Unlike in Manila, they wait for you to top your building, then tell you it's illegal because it's a backdrop to Jose Rizal or whatever. Only after you finish your building. Again, how not to do it. Next slide. Berlin, Germany, they copied our tricycles. Next slide. This is Madrid, linear parks everywhere, connecting the city. Next. And this is in Amsterdam. This is a representation in a computer form. If the whole Amsterdam gets flooded, which will never happen because they designed a drainage system based on a 1,000-year history. In Metro Manila, our drainage system is based on a 25-year history. So when we have the big typhoon that happens every 100 years, the drainage system is 75% undersized. Next slide. Chicago, USA. Daniel Burnham planned Manila in 1905, 1909, Chicago, and Baguio. Chicago, until today, the Daniel Burnham principles of planning, they still follow it, but they keep updating it. So this would have been like Manila Bay and our waterfronts today. Next slide. And Boston, Massachusetts. In Boston, they have what they call the Boston necklace. all the open spaces are interconnected with linear parks. You can walk, you can bike all over Boston metropolitan area because of these linear parks. And they used to have a skyway along the harbor. They said it was a $34 billion mistake. They removed the skyway, put it underground, put a park for the Bostonians to be able to walk to the harbor front. And here we are, we're building more skyways. Next slide. And Toronto, Canada. Again, next slide. So Calgary. So these are inspirational images that we're showing you. What could have been our cities? Next slide. And Venice. Even if it's flooded, they get tourists because they know where the flood lines are and they're prepared to put these elevated interconnected walkways. Here in Metro Manila, we've known it the past since I was a student 45 years ago in the University Belt. Until now, nobody thinks of doing this. Next slide. Hiroshima, Japan. You know, Hiroshima was the worst devastated city after World War II. Warsaw was the second worst. Manila was the third worst. And look at Hiroshima today. Next slide. This is Hiroshima today. Next slide. That was Warsaw, Poland, the second worst devastated. And we were just in Warsaw. Next slide. This is Warsaw today. Compare it to Manila today. Next slide. So vertical urbanism, it's really, some people complain about tall buildings. If it's properly designed, properly planned, it's more sustainable. Like, we were the architects of Rockwell Center, and we're able to entice wealthy people to move into a high-rise. Let's say the first 5 towers that we designed, Rizal, Luna, Morsolo East, Morsolo West, and Hidalgo, 200 families per hectare. Forest Park, 4 families per hectare. Which is more sustainable? People living 200 families per hectare or 4 families per hectare? And in 1998, Boston 400, we had a conference of the American Planning Association in Boston, and somebody made a presentation. If you have a large single-family home in the middle of the city, you have a larger carbon footprint, environmental footprint, because you are arrogating to yourself prime urban land resources, you are preventing more families to live closer to their places of work, you are encouraging more urban sprawl to encroach into the forests, into the farms. So from 1998, the American Planning Association, of which I'm an active member, we were shaming the big houses in the middle of the cities in the US. I tried to do it in Makati. Instead of shaming them, they shamed me. They malign me in the media all over. You know, we are a unique country, in fact. Next slide. Dubai, something close to my heart. 1965, not a single kilometer of paved road. 1965. That's the Dubai Creek. So the ruler of Dubai name hired 20 of us from 14 countries. I was the youngest and the only Southeast Asian. And he only gave us 5 instructions. This is the Dubai Creek and Bedouin settlements. Next slide. This is the same creek today. Through a good urban planning master plan, he used our plan to go to the Lloyds of London, borrowed money to fast-track their infrastructure, leverage it against future income in oil. Because Dubai do not have as much oil as Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, but they have intelligent ruling leaders. So by using the good master plan, that's when I started the postcards from the future. The ruler told us, we're only 200,000. Design Dubai, good for 2 million people. Design Dubai as #1 city in the Middle East and North Africa in 15 years. Design Dubai as if there's no oil. Design Dubai as a garden city. We're importing soil from Pakistan, irrigation from Germany, flowers from Holland. And what's the other one? A pacesetter city. One thing I like very much is for every year of service, go around the world with your family. Go out and copy. I think that was my first exposure to benchmarking. And my colleagues, the usual, they went to London, Paris, New York. But the Red told us everything Dubai from the fourth or third world into the first world in 15 years. So London, Paris, New York took them more than a century to be first world. So I went to cities that became first world in less than 15 years. San Francisco, go west, young man, because of gold. So from gold, it became a construction boom camp, trading post, commercial center, shopping center, educational center, aerospace center. So they did not get complacent with gold. They evolved from one resource to the other. Because Dubai, in 35 years, no more oil. Hong Kong, how did it get started? I'm not recommending it here. Opium. So drugs. So may pag-asa pa tayo. Started with opium. And then it became a trading center, international port, and so on, because of opium. And then the political refugees of communist China, they brought with them, especially the Shanghai contingent, they brought with them manufacturing skills and garment-making skills. So from opium to trading to manufacturing. And then shopping center, banking center, regional center, and so on. Then Singapore. Singapore was kicked out of the Federation of Malaysia because they had short family names, Chinese. So the Bumiputras, they looked down on the Chinese Malaysians. And they were very lucky. There was an honor graduate from Cambridge, Lee Kuan Yew. What did Lee Kuan Yew do? I think he just copied Hong Kong with more landscaping. And for every tree you planted in Singapore, it was tax deductible for the first 5 years. Because after 5 years, it can take care of itself. And then, when we were planning Dubai, I made anecdotal research in Singapore. Every 30 minutes, a major ship calls at port in Singapore. Every 20 minutes, a dwelling unit was given to a Singaporean. Today, 82% of Singaporeans live in public housing. So, move to Europe. What are the instant cities in Europe? Zurich and Geneva. How did it get started? The refugees of World War I and II. The French and the Germans went to Zurich, the French went to Geneva, the Italians, they went to the rest of Switzerland. They brought with them watchmaking and chocolate making. So those two cities started with chocolates and watches. And then banking center, world center, and so on. And they were able to evolve. So I brought that with me to Dubai. So what will happen? Postcard from the future, when there's no more oil in Dubai. So all the infrastructure were designed for 2 million people when we were only 200,000. And it was mentioned I visited more than 1,000 cities, worked in 39 countries, I've spoken in 19 countries. That's why when I spoke here, Asia CEO Forum, when I was asked who I was voting for, said I cannot mention the name. But I mentioned one thing I learned, 5 ingredients of success, cities and countries. Visionary leadership, leaders with vision. Strong political will, good planning like urban planning, good design like architecture, engineering, and sciences, and good governance. And their leaders are not integrity challenged, and they are not intellectually challenged. So let's Dubai Creek today. It was dredged to make it navigable. Next slide. This is an artificial waterway. Next slide, man-made. Burj Al Arab, the first 7-star hotel in the world. Next slide, Jumeirah. This is Dubai at night. They have more landscaping than Metro Manila, imported soil. Next slide. Ports in the world, Dubai Port. More landscaping of Dubai. The Palm Islands. Reclamation there is not just for real estate. It's like the palm of a hand, then they put this crown. That crown there is a wave breaker for tsunamis and storm surge. In our country, they just think real estate, real estate, real estate. So to be sustainable, you should also make that reclaimed land to protect mainland. Next slide. And this is the tallest building in the world, 828 meters. And people, especially my fellow environmental crusaders, I tell them this is more sustainable. Here you can have the tourist belt, the viewing tower, the hotels, place to live, the residential condos, place to work, a lot of offices, even place of worship, and shopping, dining, and so on, in one area. If you distributed it in an urban sprawl, you might need 20 blocks. Just to collect garbage, you may have to run the garbage truck and pollute the air. But here you go only to one place. Even the utilities, it's only in one place. Next slide. And some revolutionary ideas coming out now. Vertical gardens, vertical urbanism. I think our problem in our country is most of those leading developers, not all of them, it's all profit, profit, profit. At Palafox, we don't take all the projects that come our way. The triple bottom line +2, social equity or people first. How much job creation will this project give and poverty alleviation? Then planet Earth or the environment. Then we can talk about prosperity, economic goals, and profit. We have added 2 more, heritage, culture and history, and spirituality. And we don't write it down, but that every project we do, we are very conscious of. If you do a good job, who are the beneficiaries? If you do a lousy job, who are the sufferers? And I tell my people, maybe the first sufferer, if you even forget that handicap ramp, might be your grandmother. So I ask them to be very, very careful about thinking about not just drawing lines, but the beneficiaries and the sufferers. Next slide. And let's plan for long-term growth and renewal, design on a human scale, full use of urban services, providing transportation alternatives, efficient use of land resources, and conserving the landscape. And good design really matters, and providing choices and protecting environmental resources. Next slide. And green urbanism, it might take a day to explain all of this, but really making our communities and cities more sustainable, starting with the transportation. Walking, biking, integrating together, places to live, work, shop, and dine, learn and worship. Next slide. And this is the future of our cities. You shop and dine on the first 2 floors, you work on the mid floors, you live on the upper floors. Before the war, Escolta was like this. In the US, they call it new urbanism. It's actually going back to the old urbanism. They call it new urbanism. Next slide. So develop affordable mixed-use neighborhoods, living, working, shopping, learning in a walkable community. Next slide. And this is the anti-snub zoning of Massachusetts. Every development there, 20% must be for at least affordable and for the urban poor. And the 80% open market housing, the profits you make, you cross-subsidize the urban poor. I've been putting this forward for so many years, especially government land being sold, like Fort Bonifacio, reclamation. We have 26 million very hungry Filipinos. The survivors of Ondoy and Yolanda, until now, they don't have proper housing. And the biggest landowner is government. And yet when they do PPP, it's the urban rich benefiting again. And if we use the anti-snub zoning of the state of Massachusetts, I think we will have, we treat the urban poor better. Next slide. Social justice instead of selective justice. Mixed-use, multi-use development. So it's always better. Like on the right side, the Stockwell Center, which we were the master planners and architects. And down below is in Davao, Philcris, one of our recent projects here. Next slide. And this was my first sketch for Rockwell, the one on the right side. It used to be a polluted power plant. And when we were designing it, a survey was done. We Metro Manilans, we walk only 400 meters. We're spoiled by stop anywhere, tricycle, jeepney, super-driven cars, and even buses and jeepneys. So we made the point that if you live there, everything is within 400 meters. The supermarket, the place of worship, the school, and so on, and offices. I hope it can become a planning standard that anything you need every day must be within a walking distance. Things you need every week, maybe bicycle distance. Every month can be a public transit distance. Next slide. And this Rockwell today. And what they have taught us in architectural schools in our country, there are only 4 kinds of facade. The front facade, the back facade, the left side, and the right side. One thing I learned in the Harvard Graduate School of Design, more importantly, is the facade from above. How the built environment dialogue with the natural environment, the visual corridors, the context, the convergence. So more important is how your building contributes positively to the neighborhood, to the community, to the city, to the human scale, not just to the automobile. Next slide. And this is the 5th facade, the ground space, and how the different buildings have a nice conversation with nature, with the outdoors, the indoors, and the outdoors. Next slide. This we practiced in Dubai when we were planning Dubai. There are 3 kinds of infrastructure. We know the hard infrastructure. These are the roads, the utilities. Progressive infrastructure are the international airports, international seaports, international schools, international world-class hospitals, and maybe telecommunications. The soft infrastructure is the most important. No corruption, the ease of doing business, no red tape, no obsolete laws making us less globally competitive. So very important, the soft infrastructure. The President announced yesterday permits will be done within 72 hours. In Dubai, the rule of Dubai started us that time. I was representing the Urban Planning, Architecture, Engineering Department. Approved permits in 1 day. Because the businessman, it's his money, his own land, and his own reputation. And the one approving it, the ruler told us, I'm paying only 6 hours a day. We're working only 6 hours a day. And anybody, signatory who has any objection, maximum fortnight, 2 weeks to justify your objection. If you cannot justify it, automatically approved. Look at Dubai today. For every Dubai citizen, there are 10 jobs available. For every Dubai citizen, there are 6 tourists visiting Dubai. And they don't even have personal income tax. Everybody just pay value-added tax. I wish they'll do that in our country. Because we pay our taxes, but the corrupt and the smugglers are tax-free. But with value-added tax, the rich and poor, we pay value-added tax. If you don't want to pay value-added tax, grow your food in your garden so you don't have to eat in restaurants. So it's possible. Next slide. So there are 20 kinds of urban transport. Number 1 is walking. I think we should tell our public works, transportation people that walking is number 1. And healthy cities, healthy communities, we should walk at least 10,000 steps a day. When I'm in Boston or in New York, even Dubai, because they have elevated walkway, I walk about 20,000 steps today. In Makati, 2,000 steps today. Because we have traffic signal lights, 99 seconds for the car, 9 seconds for the pedestrian. So if you are in high heels, you'll never make it. and they say Makati, ganito kami sa Makati is walkable. It's not. So, motorcycles, automobiles, and so on. So we have 20 kinds of transportation. It's not just the automobile. After the OPEC oil crisis of 1973, the rest of the world, they penalized the use of the car. Not the owners of the car, but they penalize it. Next slide. So it's pedestrian first, then bicycles, then public transit, then the automobile, the private car. Order of priority. Next slide. And in Manhattan, this is the Times Square, Broadway. Former Mayor Bloomberg closed it from traffic. He made it into a pedestrian precinct. If you're sitting there, I think you can hear 200 languages being spoken. Next slide. This one in Shibuya, Tokyo. You can see 60 seconds for the pedestrians, 60 seconds for car traffic. Unlike Makati, 9 seconds for the pedestrian, 99 seconds for the automobile. Next slide. So this is in London. 30 seconds for the pedestrian, 90 seconds for the automobile. Next slide. And activate spaces for safety for the disabled, the children, elderly, pregnant women, people with all types of physical disabilities. You know, I served in Luneta when Pope Francis was here. And there was no toilet for the handicapped. And for women, the toilets for men maybe just 20 meters long. For the women, almost a kilometer long, waiting. So how gender insensitive we are. Next slide. And surfaces. So you can feel the surface of the sidewalk. So you are in a cane, you could hardly hear. On a wheelchair, you can feel that you are crossing over the danger zone of the automobiles. Next slide. And bicycles everywhere. Most progressive cities now, there are rental bikes. Next slide. Curitiba, Brazil, not a big city in Brazil, and one of the best bus service in the world. Even this is their bus stop. The floor is the same level as the bus. So even if you are in a wheelchair, you can move across in only one fare. Whether you go 1 kilometer or 10 kilometers, only one fare. Next slide. And Bogota is the same. In Colombia, the mayor was so good in addressing their traffic and transportation that the mayor of Bogota was hired as transportation planner for New York by Bloomberg. Next slide. And this is we have been proposing this in all our projects, whether they follow it or not. 1/3 for people, the road cross section, trees and landscaping. 1/3 for vehicles, and 1/3 for trees and landscaping. 1/3 for people, 1/3 for cars and vehicles, 1/3 for trees and landscaping. This should be the cross section. And Davao is a city, but you don't have sidewalks. Yeah. Next slide. So this one, Remedios Street in Manila, proposed. We're starting now to show the postcards. You know, you are architecture students. What we do, because we have 2,000 applicants, OJTs all over the world, but we could accommodate only 20. We tell our OJTs, go around the city and take pictures of the uglification of our cities, and we send postcards from the future to the mayors. Some of them get very upset, some of them they hire us. That's the postcards from the future I'll show you later. So this is a postcard from the future for Remedios. Next slide. And we need nature back into the city. Next slide. And this is a tourism master plan we did for Ilocos Norte. So even the tourist destination areas, we make it handicap-friendly, accessible. Poway Church there, UNESCO, it used to be surrounded by blank walls, written in Ilocano, do not urinate here, do not throw your garbage. So we told the governor, we remove those blank walls and we make boutique shops to make it more alive. Next slide, and then the Watchtower there. Next slide. Next, linear parks and public open space. That's the High Line in New York, abandoned elevated railway. Now it's interconnecting the high-rise buildings for pedestrians. Next slide. Central Park, New York, lungs of the city. Next. Pocket green spaces in parks. Next. Recreating the urban community. This was a tin mining outside Malaysia. So you can really have responsible mining. That's in Sunway Lagoon in Malaysia. This was the largest open pit tin mine in the world. Now it's very well landscaped. They have a university, shopping mall, and condominium. So the abandoned mines, they can be done like this. Next slide. And parks and open spaces, these are the ratios. Next slide. And this one, I think the past 44 years, I've been advocating for this. Metropolis, megalopolis, aerotropolis, agropolis. I think what's good, that may be appropriate to be developed for Mindanao cities is agropolis. Agro, the farm, polis, the city. We've recommended this in India, Chandigarh, they followed us. We recommended this in Sudan, they followed us. Vietnam, they followed us. I've been advocating this for the Philippines. In a limited sense, they followed us somewhere in Calabarzon. They call it leisure farms. And there's so much agricultural land in Mindanao because agropolis is more efficient than metropolis. Because metropolis, there's a parasitic relationship between the farm and the city. You look at the food miles, at the food that arrives at your table. On the average, 1,300 miles, the origin. But if we have vegetable gardens near our home, you just pick them, you reduce your carbon footprint as a consumer. So aerotropolis, cities that have international airports, airport-driven cities. Megalopolis is a collection of several metropolitan areas. And I see this around Davao. Davao is 3 times the size of Singapore. If you plan Dubai well, it can accommodate 15 million people. You are 1.7 million, and you're complaining lack of land. That's why the RH bill, when I was president of the Management Association of the Philippines, I was cajoled to sign it because I was president. After I signed it, I went to confession because I don't believe in it. It's a population distribution. It's not population control. It's so that's why I support the regional development and federalism. The mayor, when last I spoke to him before election, architect, you don't have to vote for me, just support federalism. And I told him, as an urban regional planner, it's good for the country because of even to address the problems of Metro Manila. If the big earthquake happens in Metro Manila now, with good governance, it will take at least 15 years for our national economy to recover. With good governance. With a lousy governance, probably 100 years is not even enough. 40% of our economy is in Metro Manila, education, government, everything is focused there. So one of my term papers in Harvard was identify urban growth centers as counter-magnets to Metro Manila. Because the growth of Metro Manila is due to in-migration. But if you go federal, just like Switzerland, whether you study or Germany, you study in the key cities or in the provinces, the same quality of education. And I think even to help Metro Manila, we should develop the regions. And towards later, I don't know how many slides more, just go on. Next slide. So this is the food miles. It's 1,300 miles from the farm to your table. So how much carbon footprint you have? Next slide. So the roof need not be your liability. It can be your asset with vegetable gardens, rainwater harvesting facilities, flower gardens. Next slide. And this is urban agriculture in the UK. I think my daughter Karima took this picture when she was in Oxford. So vacant lands in the city can become urban farms. Next slide. Agropolis. This is only 70 kilometers from Metro Manila in Bulacan. And they hired us to do some city planning there. So I've recommended the concept of agropolis. Next slide. Earthquake adaptation. This is Taipei 101. Some engineering concepts to stabilize it. Next slide. We've been doing projects after big disasters. This was in Bam, Iran. And it was Chuchi, the Buddhist organization from Taiwan, that commissioned us in Bam, Iran. And we used their old wind tower, cross ventilation, collect the wind from above, cross ventilate. And the temperature is 20 degrees lower in summer and 10 degrees in autumn. Air conditioning is just an option. And it's so hot there. Next slide. This is Singapore. These are the public housing now. They interconnect the building so that if one building is on fire, you can move to the other building. Next slide. I've been proposing this for Parañaque Spillway to address the flooding of Metro Manila. They've done it in Kuala Lumpur. The first 2 levels are for urban roads. The lowest level is for floodway. And then if the floods are too much, it can be converted to all the floodway. We proposed that since I was 24 years old. I'm already 66 years old. Still suffering from analysis paralysis. Next slide. Flood-proofing adaptive architecture in New Orleans after Super Typhoon Katrina. You can see they are elevated now, just like our ancestral homes. The house of Brad Pitt is similar like this in New Orleans. Next slide. This one, after Ondoy, we propose adaptive architecture. Float your house, put it on stilts, or just let them float them. We made the mistake of coloring the water so clean, they thought these were resorts. these are floods and interconnect the houses. So we got inquiries for resort development, not for adaptive architecture in flood areas. Next slide. So again, the flooding in Iloilo. Next slide. This one we propose for Smoky Mountain for the urban poor. I was able to get commitment $3 billion pesos from our clients abroad, especially the Chuchi. But it would take $3 billion to clean the garbage of Smoky Mountain. So the benefactor said, clean up your garbage, then we'll build 6,000 homes for the poor. And the green walls are vegetable gardens. And the ground floor, it can be flooded. It can be a play area for children. Next slide. We are number one in the world, the Philippines, in marine biodiversity. We're number one in boys' call centers. We're number one in sailors and seafarers. I'd like to believe we're number one in musicians. We're number two in geothermal energy. We're number two now in BPOs. We have the third longest coastline, number 4 in gold, number 4 in shipbuilding, number 5 in all other mineral resources, and number 12 in human resources. Next slide. We are 400 times the size of Singapore. You can fit 400 Singapores in the Philippines. 350 times the size of Hong Kong, 8 times the size of Taiwan, 3 times the size of South Korea. From the 1930s to the 1970s, we were number 2 in Asia, second only to Japan. That's why all the Asian countries thought Metro Manila had the highest development potential as financial center. So they located Asian Development Bank here. Japan, who is the biggest contributor, objected, but they agreed eventually, provided the president will always be Japanese. Next slide. So what happened? Corruption, criminality, climate change. And if we really address corruption towards good governance, criminality towards better business order, and climate change for protecting and enhancing the environment, I think by March 16, 2021, when we celebrate our 500 years as Philippines and as a Christian nation, we can make it to the top 20 economies of the world. Next slide. And here, even Hong Kong Bank and other forecasters, by 2025, we should be in the number 19th economy in the world. By 2050, we should be in the number 16th top economy of the world. Next slide. And even cities, emerging cities for global investment, Jakarta, second Manila. Today, it's still the usual suspects, New York, London, Paris, Tokyo, Hong Kong. And potential, it's Jakarta and Manila, the key cities in the world. Next slide. Yeah, that's a March 16. One of my, the milestone dates of planning we do now is 2021. Next slide. So we really need to plan as a milestone date 2021 and beyond. And what we're doing now in our office, even if nobody has really appointed us, the Philippines, the next 100 days, the next 5 years to 2021, and the next 100 years. We are after the big earthquake in Kathmandu, Nepal, our firm, I was assigned to design for a hospital, a university, and 3 schools to last 1,000 years, even if my liability is only 25 years. And these are Buddhists from 90 countries appointing us. See the confidence, trust and confidence to Filipino professionals elsewhere in the world. And it can be done. Next slide. So our population, by 2050 will be 150 million Filipinos, 35 million more Filipinos. We'll need at least 100 new cities. Otherwise, our major cities will become as bad, if not as worse as Metro Manila, the next 35 years. That's why I'm glad the millennials and the students are here, because if we are not able to address it in our generation, it will be your generation. Next slide. So this is one of my term papers in Harvard, how Metro Manila is growing. 30 million people by 2030. And we'll need 3 airports. They're still arguing whether it's Clark or Manila. We need at least 3. New York is less than 20 million people, they have 3 airports. London, they have less than 20 million people, they have 3 airports. In Metro Manila, they're arguing whether it's Manila or Clark. We need both plus 1. Next slide. So you can see here a satellite picture of the Philippines at night. So you can see Imperial Manila. The only lighted portion is Metro Manila. I think this picture demonstrates planning is supposed to be balanced growth. See how imbalanced is our growth. Metro Manila and the rest of the country, the primacy of Metro Manila. A primate city is 10 times larger than the second largest city. So this shows challenge us decision makers and planners to address this big imbalance. That's why we're very fortunate, not because I'm in Davao right now, that we have a president coming from Mindanao. Next slide. So this is the central business districts of Metro Manila. It's nice aerial perspective, but again, it's how not to do it. The EDSA corridor, we have the central business districts of Makati, Ortigas, Cubao, and so on, surrounded by low-density gated communities. You know, in Makati, our quality of urban life is not there anymore. The average employee of Metro Manila wastes at least 1,000 hours a year in traffic. Better planned cities in the world, maybe you in Mindanao, in Davao, you are not spending more than 300 hours a year in traffic. But if you don't plan it properly, you're getting there. And the traffic in Metro Manila now is even, the opportunity lost is 2.4 billion pesos a day. By 2030, with the do-nothing scenario, it will be 3 billion pesos a day. It's even higher than corruption now, the traffic in Manila. So this is an urban laboratory how not to do it. The big imbalance between the centers of jobs and economic activity surrounded by low-density gated communities. Next slide. And these are nice skyline, but it's not how not to do it. You can see the skyline of Makati. How many, all central business districts in the world, every 70 meters or 210 feet, you have an access road. In the Makati Central Business District, you have to go around 2 to 4 kilometers because of the walls of the gated communities. And since 1973, I've been asking to open up those private roads, at least during peak hours. So again, instead of shaming them, they shame me even in the media. And even Los Angeles, all the gated communities in Los Angeles, after the OPEC oil crisis of 1973, the mayor forced them to be open. Of course, there are CCTV cameras, and there's big signs, a camera is following you, but they're open. Next slide. So 1976-77, actually it was this World Bank funded plan. I was team leader and senior planner that leaders else in the world like Dubai saw our planning report. We had more than 300 recommendations: transportation, housing, land use, healthcare, flooding, and so on. Had this plan been followed, we would not have the catastrophic flooding and traffic today. Next slide. And the flooding of 1970 on the left, the flooding of 2009 on the right, almost the same footprint of flooding. So it's really a do-nothing scenario. Next slide. And with the 7.2 earthquake, 50,000 people will get killed. 30,000 from the earthquake, and 20,000 from the fire. 7 bridges will collapse. 2% of tall buildings will collapse. 30% of low-rise buildings will collapse. Almost all government buildings and infrastructure that involve corruption, they will collapse. That's why I say corruption kills. So let's say a corrupt politician has 26% kickback. Where did the contractor reduce the 26%? Maybe from the steel bars. I saw it in Yolanda. Many of those that collapsed were imported steel from elsewhere in the world that did not satisfy our minimum standards. Next slide. And the 10 sequential roads proposed by the Americans before they left us, 1945, until now, circumferential road number 6 is suffering from analysis paralysis, not yet built. 71 years ago, it was proposed. Next slide. And this is Guadalupe Bridge today. It will collapse with a big earthquake. So every time I pass there, I have to drive faster. And government knows that. Because MMDA and Public Works were arguing whether they should do it or not. And thanks to Pope Francis' visit, the Quirino Grandstand, Public Works fixed it because the canopy was going to collapse. So they fixed it before Pope Francis visited. If he did not visit, maybe it was never fixed. Next slide. So this I had proposed long time ago. 10 circumferential roads outside Metro Manila. And number 10 with interconnect Bataan and Cavite at the mouth of Manila Bay. So you don't have to mess around with the traffic in Metro Manila. And interconnect urban growth centers outside Metro Manila. So this can be done nationwide. Next slide. Like a tunnel or a bridge. Next slide. And Cebu, we're promising, seeing how it will grow in the future. Next slide. And Davao, of course, in Mindanao. I've been invited to Tawi-Tawi to take a look at it, and I was told the meaning of Tawi-Tawi is very far, very far. But when I made the map of East Asia Growth Triangle, Tawi-Tawi is in the strategic center. So Tawi-Tawi can be a gateway from the East Asia into the Philippines. And the same with Davao. The Davao Gulf and Davao can be the start of the Megalopolis, several metropolitan areas ringing around the waterfront. Next slide. This we did this, not an advertisement, but North Town in Davao. One thing that we did here is, again, designing with nature, minimize the cut and fill, and rainwater harvesting. They will harvest rainwater. Next slide. And this one is Damosa land, also in Panabo. Next slide. And Faircrest, this is a Davao project. Next slide. Next. And next. Of course, very important is the social interaction area for people to gather together. Next slide. This one, year 2006, I spoke in the 60th anniversary of the United Nations in New York. I proposed to interconnect all the continents of the world by bridges and tunnels. Immediate reaction was, this crazy Filipino, what's he talking about? And the next day, people were congratulating me. It would have been cheaper than the Gulf War. So when I came home here, I tried to interconnect the whole Philippines with not just nautical highway, but bridges, tunnels. And the maker of the fastest train in the world, only 2.5 hours from Lawag to Davao is the maglev train. It's shorter than waiting for plane always late. And when we're doing Guimaras, also to interconnect Guimaras, Iloilo, and Negros, the Yolanda corridor. Next slide. And this was my proposal for the rest of the world. And there was a purpose in New York. I changed the map of the world. If you rotate the map of the world, the Philippines is right in the strategic center. And I explained to them, many centuries ago, the center of trade and commerce was the Mediterranean. The last century was the Atlantic. This century is Pacific, Asia Pacific. And the Philippines is right in the middle. So I told them, it's no wonder Ferdinand Magellan, without a nautical map, he arrived in the Philippines. And we were Asia-Pacific hub of Spanish Europe for 300 years. More than 50 years the Americans, 4 years the Japanese, 2 years the British. Every superpower will always be interested in our islands. And to make it more challenging, we have a Philippine Air Force, all air, no force. We have a Philippine Coast Guard, all coast, no guards. So I've been proposing a revolutionary idea. Why not the islands we cannot protect? Lease them out for 1,000 years to friendly countries. And I'm borrowing that from Dublin, Ireland. You know the Guinness Brewery in Dublin? 1,000 years land lease and 1,000 years water rights lease for Dublin River. So they make sure the river is clean because they make it into beer. Why can't we do that here? So next slide. So these are the postcards from the future. Next slide. So this is the waterfront in Butuan today. Next. Postcard from the future with the promenade. Next slide. Ilocos, this is the University Belt today. Next slide. Postcard from the future, the University Belt. Next. Estero de la Reina in Manila today. Postcard from the future. Next slide. Estero San Miguel in Malacanang today. Postcard from the future. Next. Estero de Paco in Manila today. Postcard from the future. Next slide. Manila Bay Urban Renewal, North Harbor today. The future. Next slide. El Mediterranean Creek today in San Juan. The future. Postcard. San Juan River today. Postcard from the future. LRT station in San Juan today. The future. Annapolis Street in Green Hills today. Postcard from the future with the monorail. Molo Plaza in Iloilo today. Postcard from the future. And the waterfront with the informal settlers in Iloilo today. The future. And Rio Hondo in Zamboanga today. The future. Proposed. Again in Zamboanga, Paseo del Mar today, the future. Pasig River today, postcard from the future. And it's starting to be realized because we were the architects of Rockwell. So Rockwell is on the left, with pedestrian bridges, ferry boats, promenades along Manila Bay, Pasig River, and Laguna Lakefront. Next slide. So development is not worthy of the name unless spread evenly like butter on a piece of bread. I wrote this in my term paper in UP in 1973. I think it's still valid today. Next slide. And Daniel Burnham, when he planned Manila in 1905, make no little plans. They have no magic to stir men's blood. Make big plans. Aim high in hope and work. Remembering that a noble logical diagram, once recorded, will never die. But long after we're gone, will be a living thing, asserting itself with ever-growing insistence. Remember that our sons and daughters are going to do things that would stagger us. Let your watchword be order and beacon beauty. He wrote this when he was planning Manila in 1905. Next slide. So for God, country, and planet Earth, everything we do. And I think we all like to live in environment-friendly, master-planned cities, communities that are better connected, more accessible, more walkable, more bikeable, safer, better lighted, more convenient, cleaner, with mixed income, cross-generational, and mixed-use developments that would integrate places to live, work, shop, and dine, learn and worship with healthcare and recreation, and leisure with some 24-hour cycle activity centers. Thank you very much.
Wow, what a very good presentation. I'm sure all of us are now dreaming of a better city, not only for Davao, but for the entire Philippines. And it is indeed a Herculean task, not only for the government, but most especially for the concerned private sectors like an academic institution such as Ateneo de Davao, and of course, more importantly, on us, the Filipino people. So it's really a challenging thing for all of us. Thank you, Architect June Palafox. Palafox, sorry po, thank you. The second part of our program will give us a chance to learn more as we listen to the panel of reactors. So I will be requesting the panel of reactors together with Architect June Palafox to please come in front and sit po on stage. Our first reactor is Engineer Jose Froilan Rigor, the Planning Officer for City Planning and Development Office, City Government of Davao. I'll just introduce them first before I'll call them to talk. Our second reactor is Dr. Miano Antipolo. Sorry, Sir Antipolo. Kanina ko pa pinapractice. Mukhang napalpak pa rin. Our professor, he's a professor of our graduate school, particularly in the schools of business and governance, as well as the School of Arts and Sciences. He is also the president of the Mindanao Economic Society. Our third reactor is a very young and promising architect. I was telling him perhaps you might be the Architect Palafox of Davao City, right? So, let me introduce Architect John Emmanuel R. Palma from the School of Engineering and Architecture, and also a representative of the Davao City Sustainable Development Movement. And of course, our last reactor is no other than Mr. Arnold Van der Broek. Tama po? Yes, Van der Broek of Save Davao Shrine Hill Movement. So, ladies and gentlemen, they will be our panel of reactors. So, please sit po in front on the stage. Table na lang po kayo mag-react. So for the comfort of our panel of reactors, you may share your statement, your reaction in your respective seats. So the first panel of reactor will be Engineer Rigor. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon to everybody, to Architect Palafox. It's really a great opportunity for me to be sitting like a student at the back of the row. And kasi I've been with the government for the last 30 years. PPP ang kwan ko eh. Pa-planner lang. Although I'm a civil engineer with a little bit in transportation planning, maybe what I could share probably with you is the experience that we have at the city planning and for 30 years. I'm about to retire from government. But anyway, hello, sir. Good afternoon. And to the rest of the panel, Architect Palafox is there. I don't know what to do with your reaction, but I took note of the points that architect made in the presentation. I don't know if my PowerPoint is ready to be shown. just to give you a glimpse of what Davao City is also doing. Okay. So I presented this physical planning I think in here, doon sa kabila, with the environmental planners, and the architect was also with. Of course, we have to show to you the vision of Davao City. And of course, the vision of the city is really a development, but without compromising the environment. Now, the first reaction is about for cities copying the urban centers of the West. Actually, totoo po yung sinabi ni architect. Davao City is also planned by architect Burnham. Di ba? Architect Burnham designed Baguio, Cebu, Manila, and Davao. For your information. And when we had our zoning in 1949, we copied New York zoning plan. And what was the plan? They have an urban core, commercial, and a residential outlying. Those were the, kumbaga, uso noong 1940s, 1930s, sir. The Burgess planning of urban planning. So what happened? Nagkaroon tayo ng tinatawag na what you call the rush hour syndrome. The rush hour syndrome simply means pag umaga, papasok tayo lahat ng downtown. Pag hapon, palabas naman tayo lahat. Bakit? Kasi yung plano natin nandun lahat sa center of the city. The urban core, commercial, the schools, the commercial shops, everything in the core. And then the residence is in the outlying. So, that would create a situation where meron ngang rush hour syndrome. And what are we doing on the part of the city? As a transport planner, I would say that the only solution is to create more roads going towards the city. We have Bolton Bridge, we have Bangkerohan Bridge, we have the Maa Bridge. We are now planning to put up Bukana Bridge, to put up more ingress and egress towards the city. Of course, the coastal road would be developed soon. We just had a workshop with DPWH because DPWH is now asking for infrastructure intervention in terms of managing the traffic of the city. So yung additional ingress towards the city is the Bukana Bridge, and hopefully with the coastal road, and hopefully would be a new corridor aside from the Davao City Bypass Road. In a while, I'll be showing to you what would be yung itsura ng ating this is Davao City. Sinabi kanina ni architect that what should be our trend. We are actually an agropolis. Bakit po? Dahil meron tayong urban center and we have a rural centers, or rural areas. Look at the green. Yun po lahat na yun still the agriculture area of Davao City. The one with the sorry, high-tech kasi. So hindi tatanggap ng laser pointer, At the coast, you can see that's the urbanizing area. Diyan po tayo nagdudwell, and it would be an agropolis in the future because we have still agricultural lands in our midst. Now, sabi kanina, bakit dito kayo dili mo nagatapok sa coast when you have enough lands? Remember, we are constrained by a law that says only 15% of all agricultural lands can be reclassified by the city government. So we have almost made up the 15% according to the law. So hindi pwede kahit saan pwede ka lang mag-reclassify. Because we are restricted to reclassify lands for what purpose? For food security. Hindi naman pwede lahat ng agricultural lands pwede mo i-convert into a community. As an agropolis, taking the cue from architect, we have to balance food security with urban development. Okay? So, that is 15%. Assuming the law will not be amended, we are constrained to develop within the 15% specified by law. Ayan po yung ating 15%. We have identified our growth areas and then the water zone where we have to protect our water aquifer. Yan, yung sa local government code allows all cities to reclassify, but LGU power to reclassify is not absolute. So meron tayong guidelines that only 15% for highly urbanized cities can reclassify. So yun po yung constraint and the law. Ngayon, sinasabi natin na DDS, Davao Development Strategy. Okay? Huwag kayong maniwala dun sabi nila na DDS na ibang meaning. Because DDS is Davao Development Strategy. What is our strategy in terms of developing our area? It's a multinodal form of development. If you notice, the red circle is our urban core, and it's beginning to emerge. Lumalaki siya, andan yung Buhangin, Matina, Talomo, and Agdao. Now, you notice yung green areas natin. These are our agricultural areas of Barilog and Paquibato. Kaya nga, ano yung ating direction? We are an agropolis that would see to it that yung ating resources, agricultural lands, and potentials are harnessed. Yun namang blue is the institutional area. If you notice yung mga eskwelahan natin like UCEAC, San Pedro College, the University of UP Mindanao has transferred their school campuses in Mintal, mainly to decongest our city. Our tourism development zones are in Eden and Baganihan, Marilog areas. So meron tayong potentials for tourism because these are relatively high or medyo mataas yung elevations. No? So we have Eden, Katigan, and the two areas of Kalinan. Kalinan is our agri-processing center to process our agricultural products, and Bunawan is our industrial area. So yun po yung ating strategy. Now, the traffic code, of course, the traffic code and traffic assessment, meron tayong ordinance. We just passed this ordinance to regulate yung ating growth of the city. In fact, one of the provisions of the traffic code is the creation of the City Traffic and Transportation Management Office. So we just had a talk with the planning officer that we are going to really hire transport planners, traffic engineers, and make that department really functional. Hindi lang yung pati TMC lang na puro enforcement lang. We have created the traffic code, and we want that to be substantiated by putting in the guys who will be working like transport planners in the transportation planning division, the traffic engineers, the enforcers, hindi lang puro enforcers. So hopefully with the new administration, because we just had a talk with the new planning officer, that we really push for the substantiation of the CTTMO. Yung nakikita natin nagta-traffic lang dyan. Those are actually band-aid solution. What we really need are long-term solution to our problems and anticipate the problems right now. Like putting up of the coastal road with the new bridge, hindi pwede, a do-nothing situation, like just architect have said. We have to move now, especially that Davao City is on its abnormal growth. Bakit abnormal? Davao City now is the center. Ang daming mga Koreans na pupunta sa opisina, ang daming investors coming in. What can they do? So the hotels are almost full every day. So what are we going to do with the traffic? So the major road development policies is the bypass road. Of course, this is going to be implemented in 2018 and to be completed in 2022. So the road would start from Lisada, doon sa merong Task Force Davao, and it go all the way to Bangkas Heights, Mintal, Tacunan, and a tunnel, a 2.2 kilometer tunnel in Langob, and will pass through Mudyang, Mahayag, San Isidro, Lasang, and go all the way to Panabo Port, which is anticipated to be part of Davao City, Davao Megapolis. No? So yung Panabo is very near. If you talk about anticipate regional growth, Panabo would be linked with Davao. No? So this bypass road would be our new truck route. So yung mga trucks will not be using our existing diversion road, or we call that C2. This is C3, Synchropersonal Road number 3. And this would be our new truck route, hopefully by 2022, with a 2.2 kilometer tunnel, the longest in the Philippines when completed. Of course, these are the roads going into the farm areas of the city, because we are considering our farm-to-market road. Hindi tayo sa urban area. We have to consider our farmers and our produce in our agricultural areas. Of course, the Sasa Warp is going to be developed, and the rehabilitation of Malagamut Road to anticipate trailer and trucks using the Davao City Bypass Road. So yung location ng Sasa Wharf is very near the Davao City Bypass Road, which will enter into Malagamut Road. The diversion road in Bangkal, that's ongoing. We will complete this by this year. That is an extension of our C2 to alleviate our traffic in Ulas Junction. Of course, the PPP, Davao International Airport, is going to be developed with the PPP 40 billion project to expand its terminal and make a parallel taxiway to maximize its capacity. And then the multi-billion mixed-use development reclamation area. This is very much talk about reclamation area. The mayor or the mayor before signed the joint venture agreement for the 4 islands to be developed, to be reclaimed. I think they would be hiring Chinese yung sa Spratlys para mas mabilis yung pag-reclaim ng lupa. Joke. The Chinese is very good in reclaiming lands. Anyway, the 4 islands is going to be developed. The first island there, Island 1, is going to be a port operations area. So there's going to be a port. The proponent is actually a port operator in Manila. Then Island 2 would be the CBD and extension of our Central Business District, Island 4 Township Development and Residential Area at Ecoland. So this is a new development, but I'm worried about the traffic impact that which is UCEAC. Dito kasi lalabas kasi sa doon sa R. Castillo, and we're anticipating na kung sa R. Castillo lalabas yung mga big trucks, that will be a big mess. No? So we are proposing a northern coastal road to lalabas doon sa so it will not pass through R. Castillo. So this is the concept of the island. It is an island actually, 40 meters away from the existing coastline. So there would be minimal disturbance on the part of the informal settlers along the coast. And ang tatamaan lang, the joint venture agreement, hindi i-relocate yung mga patatamaan, but they would be housed in a medium-rise buildings. Yun lang tatamaan ng road. But they would be improved on-site. So that would be the study. Anyway, the LRT, this is Davao City Civic Center that's going to be part of the Island 3. Kasi in the joint venture agreement, we have a 5-hectare share of the city government, and we would like to propose that the new city hall would be located doon sa Island 3. So that's our dream. A postcard in the future also of Bangkerohan and Riverside. This is part of a PPP project, but this is not, yung sinabi ni architect na you need to dream and you need to be imaginative. This Riverside Boulevard is part of our comprehensive development plan. It is in the CLUP. However, it remains in the book. What we are doing is we call out those dreams in the book and we present this. Meron kaming video presentation nito when we had a visit in Korea, and fortunately, a Korean group is going to start a feasibility study in developing our Riverside Boulevard. Okay, so this is the concept. Medyo paliko-liko para hindi daw mag-drag racing yung mga sasakyan, and then interspace with some open parks. Okay, that's a postcard of the future of the river. And then the ferry would also be developed. And then the North Provincial Bus Terminal, anticipating that Ecoland would be congested, so we're suggesting a North Provincial Bus Terminal to be located in Panacan. And the LRT would also be passing through. Panacan is a very, very strategic. You have the airport there, you have the seaport, you have the LRT turning around, and you have the bus terminal, all in one area. So you have an intermodal type of an area there in Panacan. The south terminal would be located somewhere in Lisada. And then, of course, the Davao City Coastal Expressway is one of the PPP projects that we would want to propose to the investors. However, yung pong ating coastal road is now well underway with DPWH. And hopefully, we are anticipating that these big-ticket projects would somehow anticipate our growth, no? Hindi tayo do nothing sa Davao. We are anticipating our growth, and we have our target, and we have our DDS, development strategy. It would remain as such unless babaguhin natin yung strategy natin. Remember, we have agricultural lands. We are going to put up our bagsakan in Turil, in Daliao. We have a 70 million project there, the Agri-Pinoy Trading Center. All our vegetable products from Marilog and Pakibato would be dropped there, and including Kapatagan. So you see, that's the strategy of our agricultural and food security issues for Davao City. Now, I took note of architect's presentation. Of course, I've informed you that Davao City was designed by architect Palafox. Alam mo, maraming rotondang Davao City. Ang problema lang, in the past, ang daming na-suppress na mga rotonda. So we're reviving Roas Avenue. That's a big rotonda here, Roas Avenue. The centerpiece of Davao City is Roas Avenue. So we are going to... Ito na lang, I'll just present accordingly dun sa sinasabi ni architect about our lungs of the city. So People's Park is actually a small lungs of the city. It was a very good decision for the city mayor to convert our sports complex, kasi maraming nagsasabi, nagbubulo sa kanya, i-convert natin into a mall. Imagine if that was converted into a mall, the traffic that the mall would generate. So the mayor said, no, we will put up a people's park there. So it's our small lungs, but we would try to, the Osmeña Park is also, and then we would try to replicate the people's park in Turil and also in Kalinan. The district centers would have its own people's park. Anyway, yung sinasabi natin na Roas Avenue redevelopment, there's a rotonda out there to connect Chongco. Because when architect Burnham designed Davao City, he envisioned City High to be our provincial capital. I don't know what happened. Siguro wa pa kumatao, nagbuot-buot tong uban mga kuan nga gihimog City High. Okay? If you look at Cebu, yung kanyang highway sa tumoy niya, there's the provincial capital of Cebu. Di ba? Have you been to Cebu? Yung kapitolyo nila right at the end of the Osmeña Highway. So, that was the vision of Architect Palafox. Sorry. Si Architect Burnham. So we would like to revive the vision of Architect Burnham na uulitin. Kaya lang, yung City Hall, hindi na sa City High, andun na sa Island 3, which is also at the end of Roas Avenue. So we will make the old City Hall as our museum. No? Pwede siyang gawing museum to preserve our culture, to preserve our history there. Pwede rin siyang gawin ganon. But we will also try to situate yung sea level rise in the design of the island, 4 islands, sea level rise. And it would also protect the informal settlers doon, yung mga monsoon, yung mga habagat-habagat, sinabi ni architect. The coastline would really protect the informal settlers and the people because you would create a new barrier to save those guys there. So streetscaping, we would concentrate on Ross Avenue to beautify our sidewalk there. We have appropriated already initially 10 million to have a beautiful sidewalk there. Make Ross Avenue as our centerpiece of the city. So yan, meron nagja-jack, di ba? Oh. Tapos meron gano'n. Ay, sorry. 18 years old na ba kayo lahat? 18 years? Okay. So bawal yun, ha? Bawal yun. So on major projects natin, yung, if you notice yung underground cabling natin, started at City Hall. So we would like to replicate the underground cabling. The next phase would be CM Recto and San Pedro. So little by little, we would put underground all our utilities and yung electrical connections underground. So you've seen that. Medyo matagal lang nagkuhan yung contractor. Tagal nag-backfill. This is what I'm talking to you about, the APTC, Food Terminal in Daliao, Turil. Daliao is a very strategic area because from Kalinan, dire-diretso na yung highway natin to Turil. And Kalinan is connected with good roads to Paquibato and Marilog, our food baskets. So we are an agro-police. Remember that. So we will try to protect. Actually, pwede tayong mabuhay on our own in Davao City because we have our agricultural lands, we have our everything. So this is going to be a 240 million facility when completed. Of course, evacuation center, we have evacuation centers. We envision evacuation centers. Each district, meron tayong evacuation centers. And then the sports complex, which by the way, we're planning to host the Southeast Asian Games in 2019. This is a 20-hectare facility in Pintal. 8 billion pag natapos po yun. That's the whole plan. And then the Davao Samal Bridge is going to be implemented also. by the Japanese through JICA. Okay? Yung sabi niya New International Airport, NEDA has told us that each region should have its own international airport. Our international airport is only 204 hectares. Manila is 700, Clark is 1,000, Jensen is 900. So you see how small our airport is. So with 40 billion, our airport could still manage to serve traffic 30 years hence. So pwede pa siya. That's why the PPP is a 30-year plan. So 30 years hence, pwede pa tayong gumamit na ating airport only with a new taxiway. But sabi ng NEDA, after 30 years, what's a new airport? We have to find a new airport. Okay? The planning Calyawa, mayroong Tagum, mayroong Panabo, gave their new sites. And then I was thinking, ano kaya 30 years from now, yung take-off ba pa ganun pa rin or are we going to have vertical take-offs? Baka 30 years from now, parang flying saucer na tayo, no? But anyway, we have reserved at 1,000 hectare Mindanao Airport in Calyawa. That is our reserve, assuming our take-off and landing is still like this. Pag ganun na, then we can use the old airport. And by that time, wala na po siguro kung po. Simba ko lang. Di ba? But we are, as planners, we are trying to lay down the foundations for the next generations. For you, the new generations of planners, to continue on. This is what what we have done, and hopefully you can continue. So, any other points? Masyado na mahaba. But you know, yung sinabi ni architect na dreams and imagination, we have that. Sidewalk development improvement, we have. Davao is an agropolis city. And yes, bike lanes. We will also try to incorporate bike lanes in our designs. The new coastal road, and then probably Rojas and some areas. We will take the point of architect that sidewalks would be developed kasi walking is a means of transportation. It would really improve our sidewalks and bike lanes. So yun lang po. Salamat po.
Ayan, thank you, Engineer Rigor. Maganda sigurong tignan nyo, no? Lahat tayo maglalakad na dito sa Davao City. Anyway, let's hear it from Dr. Antipolo.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, Professor Albior. Following conventional wisdom, even if the Father President is not around, I would have to greet first, of course, our chairperson of the Board of Trustees, the Honorable Lizada, our guest of honor, architect, environmental planner, Sir Palafox. Lahatin ko na lang, mga kaibigan, mga kapatid, good afternoon sa inyong lahat. I have not prepared any PowerPoint because I really believe that that belongs to the guest speaker and of course our reactor from the city planning. Although I have quite a number of PowerPoints and visual aids concerning urban and regional planning. And in the interest of time, I would like to share my reaction within the broader context of environmental and urban development planning. And I would like to sketch, first of all, how it started because we are a member of the world community, namely the United Nations. In the early 1970s, my friends, the governments of the world, through the United Nations, began to convene a series of conferences which sought to trigger global inquiry into the possibilities of human future. At that time, the Honorable Enrique Peñalosa, then the Director General of the UN Conference on Human Settlements, in his introduction to the book, The Home of Man, written by Barbara Ward, recounted some of these conventions to include from Stockholm Conference concerning environment and up to the Vancouver Summit on Human Settlements. However, my friends, it was not until 1983 that an in-depth global expression of concern on environment and sustainable development took its place when the UN Secretary General requested Norway's Prime Minister, Dr. Gro Harlem Brundtland, to organize a World Commission on Environment and Development, also popularly known and derived from her family name, Brundtland Commission. Environment and sustainable development, which definitely includes the urban ecosystem, became a dominant theme in the development agenda since the Brundtland Commission report titled Our Common Future was published, in fact, in early 1987. Thereafter, a number of conferences, either solely devoted to the subject or at least as one of the key topical themes, had been held in many parts of the world, including our very own Philippines. As a matter of fact, I am a witness to the reality that following the Vancouver Declaration, our human settlements minister then, and please don't get me wrong that I am a Marcos loyalist. I am just trying to provide a testimony where credit is due, because I remember in early 70s, the First Lady, Imelda Romualdez Marcos, as the Minister of Human Settlements, really had exerted effort, and we were involved in the task force for planning, zoning, and housing. In fact, one of the outputs of that convention in Vancouver, and was dubbed as Vancouver Declaration, has led to the creation of the premier University of the Philippines Institute of Environmental Planning. And in the Asian spatial context, I am a recipient of the privilege given by the Canadian International Development Agency, which is the creation of the Human Settlements Planning Division at the Asian Institute of Technology. That again was an output of the Vancouver Declaration in Vancouver, Canada. And as cited by our guest speaker, Vancouver is one of the most livable cities in the world. During the late Marcos regime, the First Lady, in fact, has mobilized all of us in conjunction with NEDA, the Department of Interior and Local Government, but most especially the local government units in the series of the formulation of town planning, zoning, and housing exercises. Properly recalling the decade of the 70s and 80s, I believe that the Philippines has begun, although maybe belatedly, on the right track towards urban planning and development. As I have said, in collaboration with the NEDA, the DILG, and other national agencies, but most especially with the LGUs, planning has been started to take a hard look at the physical dimension rather than just the limitation to economic and social dimension. As a continuing student in economics, I believe then that that was part of the missing link in planning in the Philippines, where we did not take into account physical dimensions. And better late than never, NEDA has realized after the Pinatubo incident that we need to formulate a physical framework plan. So we had produced one for the entire country, and also cascading to the regional level and to the local level, we have a series of exercises that has produced comprehensive land use plans, as mentioned earlier by our speaker from the city planning. This is a testimony. I remember in early 70s when together with the NEDA and the Department of Public Works and Highways and the City Planning of Davao, the plan to construct Diversion Road, now the Quimpo Boulevard and the Carlos P. Garcia Highway, many people were asking, what are these for? Who will ply that route? But look at the superhighway now. There is already heavy traffic everywhere. Clearly, therefore, my friends, the point is straightforward. Planning should be projectionary in nature, and I think recalling the designs that were projected on the screen by our guest speaker, we took into account demographic pressures and even socioeconomic and political dimensions. We have to realize that the consequences of doing nothing would certainly be undesirable. Probably some of you would say, but what has been done to the city of Davao? But I would like to argue that if they have fallen short of what is expected, what could have happened if we did not do planning at all? So I think we should give a hand to the City Planning and Development Office on that account, as represented by our speaker from the City Planning. The decade of the 70s and 80s indeed had established what I consider as significant footholds for urban planning in the Philippines. For instance, what we see as quote-unquote acceptable street patterns and physical arrangement in Davao City, and all the way going up north to Panabo, Carmen, and to Tagum City, and even to Davao Oriental in Mati City, where I had been assigned as planning team coordinator, and even down south to the Soc Sargent area in General Santos City, Coronadal, and to the Sarangani area, to Alabel, and up to Glan. They all resulted from the efforts of the interagency task forces on town planning, zoning, and housing throughout the Philippines and the entire country. But this is the catch, as probably we have learned from our guest of honor. We should not be contented and remain complacent with what we know as good, better, and best, because I would like to believe that we are capable of producing what could be better than the best, applying the designs and the postcards that were actually projected by our guest of honor. We have to agree that development is an unfolding process, and that development can only be made possible if we have people, probably you and I, who are willing to take pains for the realization of VMGO that are, of course, in the blueprint of development, in the city plan, in the local development plan, and even in the medium-term Philippine development plan. The analysis and recommendations put forward by architect environmental planner Sir Palafox are, by and large, convergent with what we had and have done and will continue to do in the context of National Physical Development Plan, which is considered the mother of all plans in the Philippines. The Philippine Development Plan included, and the Mindanao Plan produced by MINDA, the RDPs, and the local development plans. But of course, we know that we are not supposed to be contented with what we have produced as blueprints for development. There is a need to extrapolate from best practices from other countries, but we need to contextualize them in the Philippine setting, and more specifically in Davao City as the subject metropolitan area or the subject megalopolis in the future. In fact, every local government unit is mandated to formulate its comprehensive land use plan, or the famous CLUP. As mentioned by our guest of honor, we need to economize the use of space, and therefore back to the principles of urban planning, which is the encouragement of compact development as opposed to sprawling development. Well, these are theories that we know even during the days of Doxiadis Constantinos, the Greek guru of urban planning and one of the revered statisticians or architect of the world. When the first Philippine Development Plan, and I'm a witness to that because I joined NEDA in 1974, and the component RDPs for 11 regions then in 1974, the blueprint of development has been categorical that the Philippines shall adopt a tripolar development strategy which is consistent and is convergent with what our guest speaker has mentioned earlier. And by tripolar, from the three letters tri, we define to mean that in Luzon, our metropolis will be Metro Manila. In the Visayas, it will be Metro Cebu. And in Mindanao, it will be Metro Davao. But even at that point, in the 70s, we in the planning circle or the development circle could already anticipate. And that is already some kind of postcard from the future that if we allow that to happen without a foresight of the future, Davao City, as the metropolis of these island regions of Mindanao, will also be polarized. And that's why you can see in the blueprints of development, in town plans, in local development plans, that we have designated what we call secondary growth centers. And these secondary growth centers are defined to be the capital towns, the capital of the different provinces, and yet at that level of planning, we also had to define what would be the secondary growth centers in each of these provinces. So in terms of rhetorics and in terms of blueprint for development, everything appears to be in order. I think the challenge remains in the implementation or in the doing. My favorite set of words are the gulf, G-U-L-F, the gulf or the gap between rhetorics of planning and the implementation of planning. When I went on to a UN exchange program with Africa, Asia exchange program, I was so proud sharing what we have done in terms of the planning process. But of course, my pride was calculated because I know that there is still a gap between the plan, the blueprint of development, and the extent to which it is implemented. So I have high hopes that with our president coming from Mindanao, because this is not planning as if it is in isolation with the rest of the economy and the rest of the different dimensions, that we can move forward and be charting our development path a lot better than before. In the final analysis, my friends, when we will be able to pursue this along with what has been recommended by our guest speaker, I would like to believe that it is convergent with what is now being pursued as a project even under ODA, Official Development Assistance, and one of them is USAID's Project Surge, which is strengthening urban-rural linkages. When I did my internship at USAID and at the World Bank Urban Development Division, I wrote a book on strengthening rural-urban linkages as an alternative to regional development. You see, what is really happening is that planning has been quite separated when you talk about urban and rural areas. And yet we should recall from the discourse of our guest speaker that we should not only be planning for agropolis and metropolis, but also for metropolis. We have agropolis, metropolis, and megalopolis. All should be closely intertwined, all should be closely interwoven. My argument for trying to improve rural-urban linkages is the fact that there is a general perception that the two areas are operationally separable. While probably in concept they are separable because we can define what is rural as opposed to urban, I think in the real world operation they are inseparable. Down and out with the idea that rural and urban development are antithetical or zero-sum games. I would like to suggest that analysis of development problems under such a framework will lead to the formulation of development policies and ergo programs and projects, and will certainly miss the mutually beneficial linkages between and among them. Accordingly, therefore, I propose that there is a need to strengthen rural-urban linkages by looking at urban planning not separately from agropolitan areas or from rural areas. And what is the key to strengthening such linkages? I think this will no longer be new to you, as our guest speaker has outlined them. We need to provide and come up with a system of small and medium intermediate-sized cities so that this will become like a sieve to the metropolis and the megalopolis. And what a way to do that is to provide this with adequate physical, meaning the hard infrastructure, but we should never forget that we need the soft infrastructure, which means good governance and can only be made possible by sustaining the goodness of human resources. And final support with institutional infrastructure. In closing, my friends, and as I would like to relate this to the first anniversary of the encyclical letter of Pope Francis, Laudato Si, on the care of our common home, we need to ask ourselves, what else shall be said and done? At this juncture, perhaps our concern is that there is too little concern for our overall environment, which includes our urban ecosystem. Once again, my friends, it should be clear that only a purposive cooperative action can prevent further extension of environment degradation both in the urban and rural areas. And on that note, I am delighted that the newly created Ateneo Institute for Environment and Urban Studies, or AtInEUS, under the leadership of Professor Ray Navasilia. Palakpakan po natin si Professor Navasilia for mounting this conversation. Pero alam niyo, yung conversation reminds me of the favorite aphorism of Sir Francis Bacon. Conversation such as what we are doing now, maketh a ready person. But we need to write the proceedings of our conversation, because by then we will become more precise, more accurate, because he said, writing maketh an exact person. So my hope is that the proceedings of this conversation are duly documented. It can be packaged as a publication for ultimate utilization in instruction, in research, and for advocacy, which will now be captured in the context of Ateneo by our community engagement. And hopefully this can spread throughout other regions. And in fact, as we have discussed in the conversation, preparing or setting the agenda for the Duterte administration, who knows, along with the proposal to have a federal system, probably all those postcards from the future will become a reality and not just plain rhetorics in our development planning, urban, rural, and regional planning in the Philippines. Maayong hapon sa inyong tanan.
Thank you, sir, for the very thought-provoking sharing. We'll be having a national conference on federalism soon, so that will perhaps help in the implementation of the projects that we have here in Davao City. Anyway, at this juncture, may I call on the third reactor, Architect John Palma.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, especially to our guests. I concur with the statements of architect Palafox that urbanization is fastly happening in our country. And if done properly, we may see the best practices of other countries be applied to our own countries and cities. But let me show you some of my slides. Start the presentation. The urbanization, as you all know, is one concrete proof of human development, and the city is considered to be the high point of human creation. Ideally, if cities are designed well, it has people converge into agglomeration and they create dense, interactive, and shared spaces that can offer advantages such as continuous innovation, wealth creation, enhanced quality of life, and better quality cities. But because of bad practices and urbanization, it has more deleterious effects, such as the rapid growth of human population and its economic activity, the depletion of both non-renewable and renewable resources, and damages to ecosystem and biodiversity. I also concur with the statements of architect Palafox that aside from that there are those infrastructures, the hard, the soft, and the institutional infrastructures are needed, but we also need to remember that we are so much dependent in green infrastructure to maintain our quality of life. Now, what I'm talking about is our ecosystem. The urban environment is an ecosystem because we interact with both living and non-living things. Let's face it, we are dependent on the ecosystem to provide us with our necessities for life. The air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat is all coming from the environment and our ecosystem. Now, because of urbanization and sprawl, we tend to forget those things and we tend to destroy the ecosystem to the detriment of our quality of life. Now, let's take a look at Davao in 2002. Now, pay attention to the estuary at the end and the developments upwards that's going towards Tigato and Cabantian. Now, by 2016, that's how much sprawl Davao City has become. Now, in other countries such as Singapore, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, they are going to be livable because they are dense and compact cities. If I'm right, sir. The density of the human population has correct ratio between built space and open space. The correct ratio of a green space to a human person, according to the World Health Organization, is 9 square meters per person. Optimum amount is 10 to 15 square meters per person. But in Davao City, it's 0.5 square meters per person. Now, the benefits of green space can be best felt if it's near to your home or if you can access it directly. Now, imagine if we continue to develop without giving much credit to green space, then we might travel at least 4 to 6 hours to the nearest green space to enjoy its multi-benefits. Now, take a look at Davao City in the 1940s. This is a 1940s map where the Davao River has not yet been diverted. Now, I have my pointer here. This is Magallanes, and this is, I think, is San Pedro. Now, I also concur with Engineer Rigor that Davao City has been planned with the City Beautiful movement in mind. Diagonal roads with beautiful vistas and rotundas. Rojas Avenue, as Engineer Rigor mentioned, was supposed to be the mall of Davao City. Now, think of it as the National Mall in Washington, D.C. Now, City High could have been the Capitol building, the provincial Capitol building, and all of this, including Ateneo, would have been government buildings bisected at the center by a huge green space, which is now known as Rojas Canal. Now, why am I so concerned about green space is that I don't want us to follow the paradigm of Metro Manila, as mentioned before. We want to still see birds. We want to breathe clean air. We want to go to places where we can exercise and just enjoy the view without having to pay money and have equal access to all. So both the rich and the poor can access these spaces. Now, one such advocacy of the Davao Sustainable Group and the Save the Davao Shrine Hills is the Shrine Hills. Now, I created this vision for the Shrine Hills in order to guide the movement into creating strategic plans and policies in its preservation and development. Now, these are the guiding principles. Ecological renewal. How can our work on the Shrine Hills address the environmental necessities of our generation? Specifically, what can we do on the Shrine Hills and in the surrounding communities to rebuild a healthy ecosystem and revalue the park system for its productive potential? How can we adapt to climate change? And how can we discover a new aesthetic that reflects a lifestyle with cultural and human processes and reconcile the changing environment? Of course, social justice. Many communities now don't have direct access to green and open spaces. Most who live in faraway places in Davao City would have to travel and spend so much time and money for transportation to go to the nearest green space, which would be Crocodile Park, People's Park, and all other smaller parks in the city. But in other green cities and other livable cities, green space is readily accessible to all. Now, how can the Shrine Hills help create a healthier and more equal society? And how can a landscape resource, which is the Shrine Hills, that belongs to Davao, become a destination for the whole city, the way the resources of the rest of the city are recognized and enjoyed by all? Of course, the Shrine Hills has the potential to become a source of economic activity, particularly of ecotourism. How can we foster new industries and new economies in an ecologically sensitive area? And how can investments in Shrine Hills catalyze broader economic activity and attract the businesses of the future? And how can our work on the Shrine Hills catalyze the growth of green industries? Improve cultural identity. Davao City has a rich history of cultural influences, and a thread linking those generations is the Shrine Hills. Remember that your parents and their parents go up the Shrine Hills every Holy Week to practice the Way of the Cross, and that becomes a cultural and a religious value for the Shrine Hills. Can our work uncover the rich cultural history surrounding the Shrine Hills? Has the tribes considered Shrine Hills as an important asset for them? Will it identify tangible and intangible values? And can Davao City become the city of the hill once more? Now, this is the vision. We want to introduce ecological infrastructure for the Shrine Hills. By growing ecological infrastructure, the full range of its services can be secured for future generations. Aside from climate change mitigation, we can integrate sustainable transportation, natural stormwater management, urban agriculture, and other green infrastructure for the Shrine Hills. So this is the plan for the Shrine Hills. We call this plan the Shrine Hills Park Connector Network. It actually connects different parts of the Shrine Hills from the GSIS side. This is the diversion side, MAA side, up to the Outland Adventure Basin, or the Gap Farm. The first area would be the Shrine Hills Stormwater Park. This site is located at the rear end of Election Brothers and at the side of Memorial Park. It's a natural catch basin of the Shrine Hills. It's a beautiful lagoon which has amazing biodiversity and wildlife. So that's the lake or the pond there. Now, you see those guys fishing there. They catch the hugest catfish and carp in those areas. In one of our biodiversity counts there, we even saw a pretty good size monitor lizard or bayawak, which would be a very good indicator species that that area is still very healthy in terms of biodiversity. So the plan was to create it into a stormwater park where it catches stormwater and improves biodiversity and where you can enjoy and observe wildlife. So these bridges and overlooks will help in bird watching, adventure trails, or just to walk around and enjoy the wildlife there at the Stormwater Park. Now this park connects to the Talanawan Canopy Walk. Talanawan means view or a vista. Now the Talanawan Canopy Walk has been patterned after the canopy walks in the Three Ridges in Singapore, wherein you can take it as an alternate route from Matina going to Maa, and from Maa going to Diversion Road. It's an elevated walkway, which means that we don't get to disturb much of the soil underneath, and you get to enjoy a new outlook because you are on top of the trees, not under it, and you get to see the wonderful view of Davao City, which is free, which belongs to all, and should not be paid for by individuals. So that's the rendering of the canopy walk. These are images of the Three Ridges Canopy Walk. So it may look like this one, but this one is in Singapore. So imagine a canopy walk in Shrine Hills where you can trek, or you can exercise, or you can just take it as an alternate route to your destination. It can even be lighted at night. And this is a quick rendering which shows you when lighted at night, it becomes a ribbon. Then a montage showing the view of Davao City. We envision the Tai Hilltop Walk, which is at the diversion side. The diversion side of the Shrine Hills has been delineated by the Mines and Geosciences Bureau as highly susceptible to landslide, so any development there might exacerbate the stresses on the geological formations of Shrine Hills and might cause a landslide in the future. So we planned it in such a way that we lessen the impact on the soil. So the canopy walk brings you down the human scale to see the biodiversity that is inherent in the Shrine Hills. So parang ganyan yung itsura niya. Imagine yourself trekking there and seeing all those big trees. So we have identified one heritage tree there, a Dao tree, which has a very big root system, and that Dao tree is like a guardian to the first spring of Davao City. The spring that served Davao City during the war and pre-war areas can still be found at the Shrine Hills, and it's servicing some settlers there at the foot of the Shrine Hills. And then it connects to the Langub Park connector, which is a small strip of secondary forest, which has been cut away from the Shrine Hills due to the diversion road. Now, this park connector can be turned into a geological classroom because you can see the different layers that make up the soil of Davao City. So you can bring your students and even yourself just to study and look at the fossils and the layering of the soil and rock on Shrine Hills. We can put an overlook on top because we do have such a nice view. Now, this overlook was designed by James Corner Field Operations for the Palisades Garden at Los Angeles, if I'm correct. Now, I'm showing this to you because it reminds me of traditional basket weaving. So we can actually input cultural elements in our design for the overview. Now, the view there at the Langub Park connector is awesome. So you can see the Artica Dome and the view of Maa diversion. So a simple montage would show you if just a simple overview can be very good at that area. And lastly, the basin is the Outland Adventure Lake. We can connect the park there, and it terminates to the Outland Adventure Lake, which is a natural catch basin once again of the Shine Hills and of the Diversion Road. Now this lake is critical because it has a lot of biodiversity in it, and it actually reduces stress levels when you're near the water. So I hope we get to develop it in such a way that it's gonna be enjoyed by all. Now, Shrine Hills has value as a landscape because we call that one as a associative cultural landscape where we associate our culture and heritage with it. Now, because of the shrine there, Shrine Hills has a great value in terms of religious and cultural aspect because a lot of people would attribute or would highlight their Holy Week with the trek up to Shrine Hills and going around the shrine. So let's take a look at Singapore before. In 1986, it was 36% vegetated, but because of the late Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew and his drive to turn Singapore, the urban Singapore, into a destination, he created the city in a garden concept, but they are evolving now, a garden city, and then now they're turning it a forest, a city in a forest, because they want to interconnect all their areas with plants to improve biodiversity. And imagine that they want na, when you open your windows, you can see hornbills or calaos or eagles flying around your neighborhood. So yan yung kanilang thrust. So they have several policies and incentives in doing this. One is the Skyrise Greenery Incentive, meaning you use your walls and your rooftops as areas where you can plant. Now, if you do that, they give you incentives in terms of tax, or they can increase your GFA, or gross floor area ratio, where you can add several more floors to your buildings without the added cost of tax. So, ganun yung kanilang incentives. And right now, by 2007, they already increased their green network into 47% area. So I think their overall ratio now is around 7 square meters per person, but they're targeting around 12, I think, square meters per person. So yan yung, that's the benchmark for the Shrine Hills, the Three Ridges Park. And they even put up an iconic pedestrian walkway called the Henderson Waves to connect one ridge to another. And imagine if you can connect Langub to Shrine Hills with that kind of pedestrian walkway that can turn into a very good tourist attraction and can serve the public very well in terms of alternative access. Now that is Hong Kong. You can see it's a dense and compact city, and they try as much as they can not to touch the green areas and open spaces in the hills surrounding Hong Kong. Now we want to reorient urbanism to Shrine Hills. We can use the green network to vibrate the city so that all the facets of the community are stimulated, providing opportunities for new lifestyles and healthier society. Again, when Shrine Hills has been created, we want to extend the project forward by creating an eco-city which has green streets, sustainable urban drainage systems, green industries, rainforestation farming, river parks and promenades, and ecological neighborhoods. Sorry. Shrine Hills is a common good Belonging to all and meant for all, it is as much as a Davao venue as all of us combined. Our purpose then is to aid Shrine Hills in the healing of Shrine Hills as a place of critical ecological importance as well as a place for working and living. We desire for a place where people can come together, and we concur that the view that parks can create new value on adjacent lands, but also propose the preservation of Shrine Hills is necessary to strengthen the image of Davao City as a city of life. So thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thank you, Architect Jan. And now, let's hear it from our last reactor, Mr. Arnold van den Broek of the Save Davao Shrine Hill Movement.
Mayong hapon sa inyong tanan. I hope you still have 10 minutes, 5 minutes. I won't make it long, because everybody is eager to get merienda, perhaps, or go to the toilet. First, I want to affirm the inspiring story, architect. It's nice to see your vision, what is possible. Hopeful, in spite of all the many difficult situations cities all over the world have to deal with. I like the 5 key factors. That's some of the things I will bring home also. The visionary view needed for urban development, political will, planning quality, good design, and good governance. Or perhaps if I summarize, I would almost say it's kind of quality of leadership. It brings it all together. Very important. That's what we also feel in Shrine Hills. No? Then also the importance you attach to green spaces. No? That's very close to our heart. I'm very much involved in Shrine Hills, but there is no need for me to say anything anymore after this beautiful presentation of Jim Palma. This is something a postcard picture perfect that we should realize for Shrine Hills. What I just want to add is a few points. How do we move this to a reality? Because you may say, yeah, very nice, but paano ito? Puro mga private lands, etc. How do you move forward? No? So to give you the real picture, one good thing that happened is that since 7 years ago, we started advocating and taking action on Shrine Hills to give it another situation in the club, the land use plan. And now the whole of Shrine Hills is around 450 hectares. And 222 of them have now been declared in 2013 as an urban ecological enhancement subzone, which is good. So many things are not anymore possible in Shrine Hills. But we still lack implementing rules and regulations, the next step that's being worked on together with the city planning. Another thing is that you have to get the developers, the landowners on board, like concretely, the people who own, or the families who own a lot of land there are the Villars, 26 to 30 hectares. Now our Department of Public Highway Secretary, Villar. Consunhis, around 30 hectares. Alcantara, 30. You still have the Royal Pines, you have the Santoses, you have the Monterits. And so I think we think that it's important to start discussing this kind of view presented by Jim Palma, to build consensus. It's not a final product. It's something, let's talk, let's discuss this, let's give more teeth to it. We also are pushing that Mayor Sara will take this on, the development of Shrine Hills, as a flagship project for her administration. To really, because it's very clear from the discussion here how important a green space, a green area of 220 hectares is in the city. Because let's face it, at the moment, how many parks do you think we have in the city? Do you have any idea? How many hectares? I'll tell you. According to the Davao City has a 25-year development plan. And according to that plan, that was made in, when was it? It's already more than 10 years ago. We have 19 parks. And what's the total land area of the parks altogether? What do you think? No. 100 hectares? No, 14 hectares. 14 hectares, even including People's Park. So these are very small. Some parks are so small. Even the smallest one is perhaps right in front here, in the front of the building, Freedom Park. Do you call that a park? Of course, it's important to have trees and we can sit there or we can cross the road in the shade. Perfect. But a park, if you compare this with Singapore, for instance, we are all inspired by Singapore, apparently. But by one count, Singapore has something like 48 parks. And an average park in Singapore is 24 hectares. So all the city parks of Davao City combined are still smaller than one park in Singapore. And if we go by the words of architect Palafox, Singapore is 3 times as big as, or Davao City is 3 times as big as Singapore. So we should have not 48 parks, we should have 150 parks, 3 times better. We have nothing. It's worth nothing. So in the plan, the target was, okay, let's improve this 14 hectares. Let's make it 80 hectares by 2021. And then there was another assessment made, okay, at least, but let's have 200, by 2016, this year's, let's have 70 hectares. We have tried to make an assessment. We didn't find anything that the area of parks in the city has increased. Meaning to say, when we say park, it is protected, lasting, permanent public. It's not, for instance, a small park in a subdivision. We are talking here parks and green spaces accessible to all citizens. Yeah. Just in the 25-year development plan of Davao City, 15 years ago, the plan claimed we have 420 hectares of open spaces. But open space, the way we play with it in the plan is something like, well, it can be open now, but it can be closed tomorrow. Like a prime example is SM in Lanang. This used to be an what was it? Golf area, but from one day to the other, 38 hectares are reverted to more profitable development. That's the way we define open spaces. One day you see it, one day you don't. And now the plan is to have, by 2021, not 420, but 1,600. Will it be again open spaces? Once you see them, then you don't? Well, what's it? What's the meaning of it? So we feel we have to do a lot of efforts to always again claim green, permanent spaces in the city. We are going nowhere. I also didn't, as a small point of comment on the presentation a while ago, it doesn't come out very much in what is the development plan of Davao City, where are the green spaces. We could allocate, if the city has political will, on the outside of the diversion road, we could allocate big areas. We could have our own park somewhere in a big park, 30 hectares in Mintal, Buhangin, Lanang, so that people from the city can go there, one ride. Just we have our own central parks. Why do we like big cities abroad? Very often because of their public open spaces. Okay, last point. Let me just refer to, there are international standards, which it's good that we all are very much aware of them. Perhaps are you familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, United Nations? No? If you are not, you should really tonight Google it and get familiar with it. Basically, it started in 2000 with the Millennium Development Goals. All countries decided on 8 development goals from 2000 to 2015. I'm not going to enumerate them. There was an assessment in 2015, and now new 17 social development goals were defined. And one which is important for our discussion here today, and which we constantly advocate about, is sustainable cities and communities. So sustainable cities and communities is very important for sustainable living. And the way the United Nations makes these goals, for every goal they have targets. The important indicator in our mind for the sustainable cities and communities is, we call it Target 7, public space target. We need public space in the cities. And the concrete target is, imagine this has been agreed upon by 196 countries, and the Philippines is one of the key formulators of the indicators. So by 2030, we should provide universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public space for all, particularly for women and children, older persons, and persons with disabilities. I'm sure Pope Francis would very much agree. It's very much in line with his encyclical. And what does it mean? What does it mean very concretely? What does it to have access to a public space? Concretely, it means ensure an accessible public park or recreational open space within half a kilometer of every city resident. So the question is, in Davao City, you yourselves, do you live within 500 meters walk of a green space? Not just a few trees, no. So let's say something, it should be at least 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 square meter. And that's the idea. Everybody, that's a human right. You should live that close to a green space. And then, so that's one. In other words, this kind of indicator is often also called nature nearby. We must be able to live near nature. And that relates also, Jim Palma mentioned it a while ago, the 9 square meter. The Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations say, how much, the question is, how much green space do you need per city resident? Green space. You have 1.5 million people in Davao City. How much green space do you need? The standard is at least 9 square meter per citizen. So that translates 9 square meter in Davao City. That should translate into 1,350 hectares. Not 17, not 14 hectares. Of course, not everything has to be parks or anything. And that brings me to a little discussion we had with, it was not a discussion publicly with the mayor, but in the media. At one point, the vice mayor of Davao City, the son of the president, was saying, yeah, these environmentalists, they are saying that we don't have enough green space in the city. But my God, 70% of Davao City is green. We have whole plantations in the city. So, of course, what's the answer to that? The total land area of Davao City is 245,000 hectares. How much of it is urbanized? Do you know? I'll tell you, 40,000, basically, no? 6-7 years ago, it was 36,000. So meaning to say, 40,000 is around 16% of the city. Only 16% is urbanized. So when we, environmentalists, are concerned about nature, are talking about greening the city, we are talking of greening these 40,000 hectares. That's the point. We of course, we are happy that you have Mount Apo and that you can climb Mount Apo. But it's the green, the urbanized areas. We saw many pictures of it. That needs to be green. That's where we need to have more green space. Okay, last point, because I want to, one of the space indicators of the United Sustainable Development Goals of the for the public space target is, imagine, all countries agreed by 2030 we should achieve a city tree canopy of at least 25% of the urban land area. What does that mean? It means that if you would take a picture from space, that you would almost get the impression that at least 25% of the land area is full of trees. It may not be actually so that 25% of the land area is planted with trees, but you create that green cover. Huh? And I think in Singapore, according to some estimates, it's 80%. Or 47. Yeah, there are many pictures, many different estimates. Anyway, I think I've said enough. Yeah, I would close again, thanking you, Architect Palafox, for the inspiring.
Sige, thank you po. Our sincerest thanks to all our reactors. And I'm sure that at this juncture, you are all excited to ask your questions, right? So we're giving about 30 minutes for the question and answer. So students, please ask your questions. State your name, the department or unit that you belong to, and the person that you want to answer your question. Okay, anybody from the audience?
Yeah, if I may, they can write also.
Yes.
Write the question, and we try to answer you anytime.
Yes, Architect. So those who are shy to approach the mic, you may just write your questions and then you can give it to me. I will read the question for you. So may I call on Maya? May microphone po tayo sa gitna.
Ngayong hapon sa tanan. I'm Maya, and I was a teacher here several years ago. I taught English 13, English 11, English 23, Ateneo de Davao and Ateneo de Manila. No, 8 years. So I'm back, but I just wanted to say that growing up, I was able to visit a lot of countries, a lot of cities in the world. No, I was very lucky. And what really, as a child growing up, what I remember of those visits are really not the shopping centers, not really the museums, the roads, the freeways, or whatever buildings and infrastructures there are in those countries and cities. But I remember the green spaces. And so when I was listening to all the presentations, I was very happy to look at the Davao City's presentation also, but I was really worried because it's all about roads and infrastructure. Where are the green spaces? No? Okay, after I left Ateneo, I started this green school in Tugbok. And we're getting a bit famous na in the world. Kay Facebook, ibisitahan namin sa Facebook. Ibisitahan namin sa PDI. No? And the reason why they're visiting us is because we are a green school, quote unquote. No? Our children, they go on nature walks. That's part of the curriculum. They grow their own food. No, they use natural toys from the environment. All our stories and songs, everything, it's all about nature. And so my point is that if we're going to develop Davao or any city and there are no green spaces, there are no places where children can actually really climb in the trees, not just look at the trees, no, but climb in the trees, it's really going to affect their thinking ba? No? Because children who have grown up in cities where there are many green spaces, they will become adults who will not prioritize buildings over trees. No? And so I'm very happy there are a lot of millennials here. I assume a lot of you are architecture students, right? Yes. So, unta, no? The message here is what really is sustainable development. It's not just about roads and buildings, but how do we really integrate green spaces in Davao City? So that's also my question, no? Where are the green spaces in Davao City? For siguro for the CPDO, Engineer Jose Rigor.
Okay, ma'am, if you notice, our bias in the presentation is actually traffic management, no? So when you're presenting about managing the traffic situation, because that's a very, very crucial in urban development, the movement of people. That's why we have presented to you the major road projects that would hopefully anticipate the growth of Davao City in terms of movement. Now, pag sinabi mong open spaces, you have noticed that in the Riverside Boulevard, we have integrated open parks. Hindi lang siya puro commercial. That is a clear indication that we are not so concerned about commercialism. No? Meron siyang commercial area, but we have interspaced with it. If you notice, may mga open parks within the Riverside Boulevard. Now, we have took notice of the comment of Sir here about open spaces. Of course, we would elevate that to Mayor Sara about the consciousness of really putting Davao City as a guardian city, be it as it may. Kasi parang Singapore na daw siya in terms of discipline. Right? Disiplinado ba tayo? We are the exhibit A of President Duterte. We better be disciplined because we are his exhibit. And therefore, yung sinasabing open space, we will be conscious in our planning now, henceforth, that we will, as much as possible, open up pocket parks. There's a need to put up pocket parks. After, in Matina, we have already identified a linear park there. Doon sa merong at Coca-Cola Village, we are putting up a linear park there. So we have made our inventories now, yung mga government properties that we can actually convert into mini pocket parks within the central business district. So thank you for giving that reminder that we will really try to convert. If you notice sa Ross Avenue, we will really make a beautiful sidewalk there. Siyempre, andyan Ateneo. That would be the showcase of Davao City, the high rises, and then go. You see the vision, you see the postcard ba yun, sir? The vision of Ross Avenue. So, yun po. Actually, we are going to also institutionalize the creation of the City Architect's Office. Sad to say that Davao City is highly urbanized, but we only have an interim City Architect's Office working with me in the Plans and Programs Division. So that's why we would like that a City Architect's Office be really put into play so that magplano talaga. It's different. A civil engineer like me and an architect, I have a son who is an architect, they go together, but they have a different thinking. That's why one of the, aside from the CTTMO that we are trying to really put up, the City Architect's Office would also be recommended to be made as a full-fledged department of the city.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yes, make it quick lang.
Yes, I'm not going to do a lecture. But I just wanted to say thank you for your answer, sir. But just to remind na si Architect Jim Palma has an excellent plan, no? And hopefully that will be taken on by the city. CPDO, naa na dire sa imong tapad, sir. Unta masunod na siya, no? This year. Thank you.
Oo nga naman, maganda yon. Yes, engineer.
Just to answer that, I talked to architects, how are you going to implement that grand vision of yours? That's why that's a good plan. Anyway, we have the basic legal requirements. We have zoned the Shrine Hills as an urban ecological zone. But we need to work fast because down the line, I've noticed that we need to have the IRR immediately. I've talked to sir that we need to put up the IRR. Kasi nangyayari ngayon, if you look at Shrine Hills, on the flat area, the proliferation of houses na walang building permit. Because the zoning ordinance says, once you're located in the urban ecological zone, you cannot put up houses there. Pero nangyayari, it's proliferating. So, it defeats the purpose. And what is worse, walang income ang Davao City dahil nagpuput up sila ng buildings without any building permit. So that's why we need to work fast. Baka yung ating dream hanggang doon lang sa sulat. So thank you for the reminder, and I would inform our higher-ups about what's happening in Shrine Hills and probably about the implementation. Hopefully, that could also be included in our priority projects because it's good that we have a talk with the new planning coordinator yesterday that we would invite people from the private sector, the architects, the Chamber of Commerce to put up the priority projects, and we would try to put that the proposal of architect in the pipeline of projects for the city, so that we will go ahead with the suggestion that we would create more greeneries in the city to interspace with our urban development.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick response from Dr. Antipolo.
Yeah, this is a rejoinder. Thank you, Madam, for raising that question because I'd also like to connect your concern with the pakighinabi, the conversation we had last, I think that was May 13, setting the agenda for the Duterte administration. I think we are all in concert with the fact that the very reason why we have this conversation series is really to involve as many as possible so that we put into practice what is participative democracy. So if spirituality is part of what has been recommended by Sir Palafox, and part of spirituality is empathy, I can actually feel for our city planning and development office. But we are not alone in that. Even in a bigger congregation such as the ASEAN, which is supposed to be a rules-based organization, there are still some problems. Like they don't even have enough lawyers to put in place institutional arrangements and to back up what should be the arrangement involving the 10-member countries. So going back, what is really important is we have the blueprint for development. And I agree, the one presented by Sir Palma is something we can start on, build on, but there is a need to really involve, and I have been whispering to our director that probably in the launching of AtInEUS, we have to bring here the chief executive of the city, supported by the city Development Council, and if possible, we will have a special session with the City Council or the Sangguniang, because this should actually require legislation so that in the final analysis, we will have the rhetorics, the design, the blueprint, which will be converted into reality. Just a quick recollection of the Shrine movement, what should I say? It was like a repartee to the argument of the Villar group about what is in it for Shrine Hills. Maybe we will not be able to get a recoupment of investment, and you start arguing about the need to have return on investment. I think this is where our guest speaker had been very, very clear in the advocacy that we can learn from best or good practices from other countries. Singapore is one. And another one which probably could be used is, some of you must have been to Australia. And we can liken that to even like Tarunga Zoo. And returns on investment can be made possible by doing that. So I think there is just a need for convergence of aspirations, and we all together we can have the VMGO for the city probably revised as a result of a series of conversations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, sir. Any question from the architecture students? Yes, Iho. Are you from the architecture? Okay.
May I, moderator? Excuse me. Maybe perhaps faster, you line up. You line up and there. Oh. There might be similar questions, we just cluster them together. We don't have the luxury of time. Thank you.
Okay, so maglinya na daw ang mga architecture students. Just please make very quick question.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. One problem would be most green spaces are located kilometers away from the city center. Specifically, they are located on the urban ecological enhancement subzones. And as what Engineer Rigor have said, there are already a lot of proposals to increase green spaces. But the problem is, how are we going to integrate a green space to an already existing concrete-dominated area? Thank you.
Oh, next question daw muna. So, Architect Palafox can categorize the question.
Sir, you have mentioned earlier that Davao City is suited for Agropolis. And if Agropolis would be implemented in the city, what would be the first step in this development?
Okay, next.
Currently, our thesis is about livable cities, and I'm currently studying rapid transit planning for Davao City. And it said earlier that Davao is planning to create more roads. And according to the United Nations, when there is congestion in a city, there is a cycle. So congestion leads to, the government seeks a solution of more roads, and in result, it would result to more cars, then congestion, then more roads. So my question is it more sustainable to create more roads than creating a more all-inclusive, comprehensive urban transportation system for the city? Or is it more sustainable to create more roads?
Thank you.
Okay, next one daw. Ayan, matatandaan lahat yan ni Architect.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is actually a follow-up question sa question before. Parang, di ba, nagplano na ng coastal and bypass roads. However, these roads only promote na magbili ang people ng cars, na parang mag-worsen lang ang traffic conditions niyan. How does that help in any way sa traffic situation ng Davao when ang kailangan natin i-fix are yung other modes of transportation like walking and etc.? Thank you. And also public transport.
Next.
Hi, sorry. My question isn't that actually as deep as the ones before. My question is that about the 13 billion project on the reclamation in Boulevard, somewhere along there, the coastline. So my question is, did the government do any environmental impact assessment on that area specifically, because that area is very blighted with the urban poor, yung mga informal settlers, so there's bound to be a lot of environmental damage in that area. And also, when you do reclamation there, are there possible wildlife na ano bang tawag? Yeah, it's basically that, the environmental impact assessment of the Mega Harbor na proposal. Thank you.
All right, one more.
Hello, good afternoon. I guess my questions will be mostly for the CPDO. Actually, 2 points now. The first, in the CLUP, we have zonings, right? We have residential zonings, commercial zonings, and industrial zones. Is the CPDO open to the idea of green zones so that Arnold's concern of open spaces, now you see them, now you don't? If you zone these things as green zones, maybe they have a more lasting. So that's it. Are you open if our group will lobby for green zones? Will you support the lobby, sir? That's number one. And I heard about the public transport concerns. I heard that there was a study conducted, a sustainable urban transport study for Davao City. And one of the major recommendations for public transport reform there was to allow the city to do public transport planning that is integrated with the city development plan. How is that now? Has that been forwarded to the office, to your office, or to the mayor? So those are my 2 questions, sir.
All right, maybe we take
Yes, you will be the one to answer first, Architect.
Yeah.
June.
Number one was how to integrate open space, green spaces to the existing build-up area. You can actually retrofit. Maybe through the building code, if you put a green roof, green walls, maybe there should be some kind of incentive. And I presented to you, ideally, the road should be 1/3 for trees and landscaping, 1/3 for pedestrians, 1/3 for bicycles, and 1/3 for the moving traffic lane. It's possible through maybe incentive zoning. And then, just like what they do in Singapore, they give you additional floor area ratio if you do that. And then the second one on public transit. Studies elsewhere in the world, or experience elsewhere in the world, you add more roads, you attract more cars. And more roads, more cars, productivity goes down. But for every kilometer of railway, productivity goes up. And in fact, Beijing made the mistake of putting all these skyways. They're the most polluted city in the world right now. So I think our transportation policymakers, public works mayor, the number one out of the 20 urban transport systems is walking. It's walking. And the policy is strong. Only 2% of Filipinos own cars, while 100% of us are pedestrians. Once you leave your car, you are a pedestrian. So there are many lessons to be learned from. Before I started working abroad in 1977, I was completely against reclamation. But when I saw it done in Dubai, Manhattan, Singapore, elsewhere in the world they call it Corniche. They don't call it reclamation. But even experts ask the question, why we have so much available land while reclaimed? And my anecdotal research tells me the problem is there's so many overlapping claims to land titling. It's easier to reclaim. You don't have to worry about land grabbing and double. And then number two, if you do it properly, the cornice or the reclamation can be a protection to break the waves of tsunamis and so on. 2/3 of the Netherlands is reclaimed. And even the Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam is 8 meters below sea level. But they're able to address the flooding. And you may want to add something to that.
Yes po. Doon sa issue about the bypass road. The bypass road would be our new truck route. It's not going to be because in the diversion road, as of now, nakikita nyo very very heavy traffic. Add to it are the big trucks. So the diversion, the C3, that's C3, Circumference Road number 3, the bypass road, all big trucks will be transferred there. If you notice, hanggang port ng Panabo and then all the way to the south, that is to serve the port of Panabo. That is an inter-regional highway, by the way. If you talk about regional planning, we have gone beyond Davao City because we're so concerned about Panabo. Lahat ng mga piers doon, the big trucks will be passing to the bypass road and all the way to Cotabato, all the way to Cagayan de Oro because there's an intersection that there's going to be interchange na Davao Bukidnon Road. So that is going to be our new truck route. So that would relieve C2, diversion road of the big trucks so that passenger routes, trucks or even public utility can use the smaller vehicles. Add to it is the public transport, yung nasabi kanina. Of course, we are biased about public transport. That's why we are now embarking into the LRT project, which would then be connected to the Mindanao Railway. The DOT just called me this morning because they are interested to help us in the Mindanao Railway. How are we going to integrate the LRT monorail? Kasi yung sa Davao City is only a monorail. Kasi kokonti pala yung passenger natin within the corridor from airport down to Turil. That's the route, initial route, airport to Turil. And there's a monorail, low capacity, and how it is going to be integrated with the Mindanao Railways all the way to Santa Cruz and Panabo. Because if we're going to expand as a megapolis, that's the way how it is going to be in the future. So sinabi nila, ang layo-layo ng La Pilipina, the airport's going to be there. But 30 years from now, we have a bullet train from La Pilipina all the way to Davao City. So assuming the airport or the takeoff is still like this, hindi pa ganon, di ba? Yun, talking about the international airport. And then the issue about open space, we already had in the zoning ordinance the open space. Hindi na po kailangan mag-lobby because there's an open space, I think. Once an area is declared as an open space, you cannot build structures within that zone. So therefore, only greeneries can be trees and things like that. So there's already an existing provision in the ordinance. Okay.
I don't know how much time do we have, but maybe this could be my last statement this afternoon. You should make a strong impact. 2009, we got a $1 million architect's fee to design a 6-star hotel in Subic. Our clients instructed me to destroy 366 70-year-old trees. I returned the $1 million. Because to me, a 50-year-old tree, the replacement value is 9 million pesos. The oxygen it gave the past 50 years, the beauty it gave the environment, the cooling effect it gave our planet Earth, and the fertilizer. I got a 50 million libel case, I got death threats, and so on. CNN of Atlanta, BBC, Al Jazeera, they came to meet the crazy architect who would give up $1 million for a few trees. After that, I got contracts from the US government, from the Sultan of Brunei, from Kuwait, and so on. So I stuck to my principle. And the upside of it, a few years after, there was a design competition to renovate Manila Polo Club. 10 architects, then we won it. I spoke to the board. I asked for 2 million pesos more to build around 2 50-year-old balete trees. And the reply was, architect, not 1 centavo more, we're a club. Then I told them the replacement value of those 2 50-year-old trees are 18 million pesos. The value of the club share was 1.8 million pesos. After renovation and preserving those 2 trees, it went up to 12 million pesos per share. And so a take-home value here is, I've been a lecturer of Harvard Graduate School of Design before I became a student. 8 times I became a student. I keep going back every time there's a global crisis to unlearn the mistakes of the past. And one of my professors, I still remember, every time I say my night prayers. And there's the room, there were 19 of us from 4 continents. I was the only Asian. And he says, you're dying tonight. Write your eulogy. And we all got writer's block. Then second, you don't have to pass your papers. You're dying tonight. What legacy you can leave behind your children and future generations. I think this is the take-home value of all the 157 slides I gave you, I shared with you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so sorry, but we have to end the question and answer portion. But nonetheless, you can still ask your questions. We will be posting the email addresses on the screen. Please flash them now. So if you have questions, write your questions and email them to these email addresses. Okay ba? Okay, so at this juncture, may I call on our Chair of the Board of Trustees, Attorney Myong Cabarde, and Professor Reyna Vasilia to award the plaque of appreciation to our guest speaker for today. Thank you po. May I request Architect Jun Palafox on front, please, in front. We will also be giving something for our panel of reactors as a sign, as a show of our sincerest gratitude. And please don't leave po, picture taking pa po.
Okay, the plaque reads, Ateneo de Davao University, Ateneo Institute of Environment and Urban Studies, present this plaque of appreciation to architect Felino A. Palafox Jr. for sharing his profound knowledge, expertise, and experience as resource speaker during the Forum on Urban and Regional Planning dubbed as Postcards from the Future towards plan-Davao Megapolis and Plan-Mindanao towards the 21st century at the Finster Auditorium, 7th floor, Finster Building, Ateneo de Davao University, given this 26th day of July 2016 at Ateneo de Davao, signed Engineer Rinaldo Navasilla, Attorney Romeo Cabarde, and Father Joel Tabora, SJ.
Yan, thank you so much. May we request the panel of reactors to please join them for picture taking? Okay, thank you po so much. It is indeed a very fruitful day for all of us, knowing the plans for our city, regions, and our country as a whole. May this inspire us to take active part in the realization of such a challenging goal for the progress and development of our country. So for us to remember very well the things that have been discussed today, may I call on Professor Marietta E. Pampanga for a very short synthesis of today's event. Thank you so much. Please stay. Shortly na lang po. We'll have merienda later on.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is difficult to make a synthesis, but I will just really, I hope that since everybody has heard everything from our guest speaker and the reactors, we'll just look at the highlights. Architect Palafox started with showing all of us how Metro Manila has grown, urbanized, and developed to create more problems in the future, and that is now. So he has shown us how not to do it. The planning for a certain space that is not good for the environment as well as the users of that environment. Then he walked with us the global trends, all the different spaces in other countries, and he put forward the different principles that are supposed to be taken from these different countries. So we were able to see a car-free city, a walkable city, a science park city, solar-powered environment, water treatment facilities, places for people. You have Berlin, who copied tricycles in the Philippines. That is something very significant for me. Then you have the drainage that in Amsterdam that has been planned using a 1,000-year history. You have a lot of it. And he was also using or taking up the importance of vertical urbanism, which for me, I don't like verticalization. But because of the supply and demand for a space, I think it is really rational to have buildings that will put more people in one space. And he has also taken or picked the importance of creating cities with a visionary president I think he was looking at the president, and a strong political will. The design should be good, and there must be good governance and not intellectually challenged, meaning the leadership. And he put in a revolutionary idea, the triple bottom economic EP approach, bottom line approach, meaning it is social equity and people, environment and the planet Earth, and economy and profit. All together must be placed within one plan, a plan for long-term growth and renewal. So he was also putting forward the green urbanism, the development of affordable mixed use, and embracing diversity to foster inclusiveness. That is anti-snob zoning. Mixed use, from brownfield to mixed use Rockwell Center as one example. And he also put forward two kinds of infra, progressive, soft, and hard. So he was giving Dubai as his example, where he has picked more of the different modes of urban transit, importance in different, just mentioning a few. The first primary transportation is walking, biking, motorcycles, scooters, automobiles, paratransit, taxis, buses, BRT, the bus rapid transit, trolley buses, streetcars, LRT, monorail, and the rest. But the most important that he has spoken is about the different designs. Metropolis, megalopolis, aeropolis, and agropolis. And he has classified and wanted to propose that Davao should be an agropolis. And he posed three major challenges. That's corruption, criminality, and climate change. That in 2021, and specifically in 2050, there must be, a must is 100 new cities for the Philippines. For a vision of a genuine reform and change for the Philippines, the bringing of the Philippines into globally competitive country, and bringing opportunity to bring down all the walls of development. To this, the different reactors were agreeing on several points. Engineer Rigor was citing that planner Burnham also made the plan for Davao City, and our own zoning plan was patterned after New York. And he agreed that the urban core, as planned, has brought a lot of problems, the rush hour syndrome, and they have put in solutions like roads towards the city. And he agreed with planner Palafox that our city must be agropolis. So he put forward three items. The multimodal form of development according to the DDS, Davao Development Strategy, 2013 to 2022. You have the traffic code and traffic management, impact assessment, and major road development policies. And he proceeded to show the different areas, Island 1, 2, and 3, as a multi-billion reclamation project for the country, for Davao City, to be built, and allot two provincial bus terminals also as one of the solutions. And there have been ongoing major projects: the underground cabling system, the APTC food terminal, evacuation center, UP Mindanao's Davao City Sports Complex, Samal Bridge, international airports. As a response of Dr. Antipolo, Well, he started with environmental and urban planning coming from the global point of view. But he agreed that doing nothing is undesirable. But he also said that there has been planning in Davao. If not, we can't have a better place than what we have in Metro Manila. But he also tried to show that Megalopolis is for Davao also. And finally, he said that there must be convergence of all the plans, and the urban-rural linkages must be in place. And most importantly, the inseparability of rural and urban development. Architect John Palma's response was that he agreed with planner Palafox on urbanization development, but he put forward ecosystem as very important for urbanization, and was quoted again by stating the correct space requirement per person in urbanization. That's the 9 square meter per person, although he said that it must be 10 square meters per person. And he showed the different postcards for Shrine Hills. And he wanted to have Davao as the city of life. Mr. Arnold Vandenbroek also responded quite quickly that he liked the key factors: political will, planning quality, good governance, and green spaces. To this, he agreed with Architect Palma, and the point that he has made a lot of significance for most, probably, from the audience, is that it must follow, all the plans must follow the international standards. And he was looking at how all these plans can be made possible if there is no action. And the green space is also very important to him. The universal access to safe public park must be ensured. The human right to nature, that you must be living close by. And so thank you very much.
That was a very short and quick synthesis, given the fact that there were a lot of ideas presented. Anyway, all things that begin well also end well. To give a beautiful end to this beautiful forum, may I call on our dashing friend, very dear friend and colleague, Atty. Myong Cabarde, our Director for University Community Engagement and Advocacy Council.
Thank you very much, very beautiful MC. I won't hold you longer than necessary because the merienda is getting cold. 3 things, gifts from this forum. 1, joy. We are overjoyed with the presence of Architect Palafox and the inspiration you have brought to us this afternoon. A person who would give up profit money all in the name of our common home and the protection of the environment. That's truly inspiring, sir. Thank you very much. Second, the gift of hope. And I think it's with great optimism that we end this forum, knowing that there are people, brilliant minds around, who are willing to help us out in designing the future of Davao City, of Mindanao, with all the panelists that we have in the future of this country, with the students of architecture and engineering. And lastly, gratitude. We will give credit to whom credit is due. First of all, we would like to thank the Ateneo Institute for Environment and Urban Studies, headed by Engineer Reina Vasilia. Thank you very much for putting this up together. the staff also of the office, no, and all the faculty, administrators, the presence of our BOT chairperson, all the students, our partner NGOs and partner communities, thank you very much, and may this be the beginning of a better journey, no, for the city of Davao. And why are we doing this in Ateneo de Davao? All because, no, of our deep care and passion for our common home, as Laudato Si would say. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you and good day to all of you. Thank you for coming. We hope to see you again in our future conversations. God bless everyone.
Okay, for students who would like to have photo ops with architect, no? Please do so. Certificate of appreciation is available at the Secretariat. Certificate of appreciation.
Thank you, sir. Merienda is served outside. You are all invited.